Chapter 963. Little Yitong's divine sense intertwined between her eyebrows, and the golden light around her body became even more dazzling. First level of knowledge, see? Wishing Crocodile said. Lin Tian nodded. It's done. He took a step forward and directly cut off Yitong's connection with the surrounding Genesis vein essence, preventing her from absorbing the Genesis vein essence to cultivate. At the same time, he shrouded her with his divine power to help her sort out her current cultivation. The golden light around her body calmed down and became more stable under Lin Tian's guidance. Just like that, another 2 hours passed very quickly. The golden light around little Yitong's body was completely absorbed, and the divine light in her eyes disappeared. The Tao runes that had appeared on her sun eye also disappeared, and it was no different from an ordinary person's eyes. Wake up! Lin Tian pointed, and a ray of light entered Yitong's forehead. Previously, the Sun Heart Sutra had been circulating rapidly on its own, causing little Yitong's consciousness to become a little hazy. At this time, he used his divine sense to wake her up. Little Yitong's body trembled, and her big bright eyes suddenly filled with vigor. She blinked several times and rubbed her eyes a few times, then looked at Lin Tian in front of her. Her eyes suddenly became wet, and she rushed over to hug Lin Tian's leg. Master, I can see you! The little girl choked. I can see. Hugging Lin Tian's leg, the little girl cried loudly. She was both happy and sad. Lin Tian rubbed the little girl's head tenderly. Master promised you that I will take back what belongs to you in one piece. This was his first and only disciple. Now that her divine eye had been reconnected, her origin had been sublimated, and her divine eye had been formed, he could finally breathe a sigh of relief. Thinking back, the little girl had really suffered a lot over the past few days. Little thing, it's good that you've recovered. Wishing Crocodile smiled. Little Yitong looked at Wishing Crocodile with tears streaming down her face. Uncle Crocodile. Wishing Crocodile nodded with a smile and said, Don't cry. A real man bleeds, not tears. Little Yitong sniffled. Her tears lessened a little, but then she cried even louder. Lin Tian crouched down and said gently, It's okay. Just cry if you want to. After all, little Yitong was only 5 years old. Wasn't it normal for 5-year-old children to cry when they were sad? Little Yitong threw herself into Lin Tian's arms and cried even harder. Daddy, Mommy, they're all gone. Hearing this, Wishing Crocodile fell silent. It had lived for so long, so it naturally knew what it meant for a 5-year-old child to lose its parents. Lin Tian patted the little boy's back and comforted him softly. Don't be afraid. Master is here. Boo-hoo! Master! Little Yitong was very sad. Lin Tian crouched down and comforted little Yitong. Wishing Crocodile also spoke at the right time. After more than 2 hours, the little boy finally stopped crying and calmed down a lot. Lin Tian wiped away the little boy's tears and rubbed its head. Then, he stood up again. He looked ahead. There was about half of the 4 complete source veins left, and there was a very strong spiritual energy. He directly compressed it with the Dragon Burial scripture, turning this half of the source veins' spiritual energy into a fist-sized ball of light. Then, he put it away. Let's go. He held little Yitong's hand and said to Wishing Crocodile. Now, little Yitong's divine eyes had returned and she could see again. There was no need for Wishing Crocodile to carry her. She could walk on her own. Let's go, Wishing Crocodile said. Immediately, Lin Tian held little Yitong's hand and walked back the way they came. Now that little Yitong's origin and meridians had been reconstructed, and her divine eyes had been reconnected. Moreover, they were even stronger than before. He had nothing to worry about, so he slowed down. Boom! At that moment, the ground in this space suddenly shook violently. A short mountain in the distance suddenly collapsed, and waves of Enchi rushed up from below, causing the temperature in this space to drop by several degrees. Lin Tian and Wishing Crocodile's expressions immediately changed. Little Yitong held Lin Tian's hand and also looked into the distance. Over there, where the short mountain had collapsed, a huge stone door vaguely appeared. The stone door was filled with cracks, and the rolling inchi was spreading out from the cracks on the stone door. It was so thick that it was somewhat frightening. It dyed the nearby mountains with a layer of black, corroding the old trees. Some demonic beasts that were comparable to immortal realm experts were even accidentally contaminated by the inchi, and were immediately turned into a pool of thick black blood by the inchi. A tomb? Wishing Crocodile narrowed his eyes slightly. It seems that this kind of inchi is not simple. Master Crocodile estimates that it is at least the tomb of a powerhouse above the fifth heaven of Nirvana realm. It has existed for a very long time, at least more than 10,000 years. Before coming here, didn't I hear some cultivators say that there is a big tomb in this ruins by a strange person who is proficient in the Tao of tomb burial? It should be the one in front of us, Lin Tian said. He looked in that direction. The inchi that seeped out from the stone door under the collapsed hill was indeed terrifying. Moreover, he could even vaguely hear the ear-piercing howls of ghosts coming from behind the stone door. Clearly, there were many demons inside, and they were very strong. At this time, from all directions, the sound of the air being torn apart could be heard. Many cultivators rushed there. There is really a super big tomb. According to this kind of inchi, the scale of this tomb must be very shocking. There must be a lot of treasures inside. There must be a divine weapon. Many cultivators rushed near the short mountain, each of them looking excited. Then, naturally, many cultivators began to take action. For a time, divine powers and secret techniques were used to smash the huge stone door. They dispersed the inchi around the stone door with their divine power. Then, one by one, they rushed into the tomb. During this process, some cultivators even fought among themselves. Whoever rushed into the tomb first would fight with their swords. Soon, corpses fell to the ground. Whoosh! 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 The sound of the air being torn apart could be heard. Many cultivators rushed to the short mountain from afar. In the blink of an eye, hundreds of cultivators had rushed into the tomb. In the distance, Lin Tian and Wishing Crocodile were quietly looking at the big tomb on the short mountain. Wishing Crocodile asked Lin Tian Dao, "Kid Lin, we don't have anything else to do now. There is such a big tomb in front of us. Why don't we go in and take a look?" "Sure." Lin Tian nodded. Little Yi Tong's body had recovered, and her divine eye had been reconnected. They really didn't have anything else to do now. At this time, since a big tomb had opened in front of them, they naturally had to give it a try. After all, such a huge tomb should contain extraordinary treasures. Immediately, he held Little Yi Tong's hand and walked with Wishing Crocodile toward the collapsed short mountain in the distance. In the blink of an eye, 15 minutes had passed. They appeared close to the short mountain. They felt that the air here was much colder than other places. It was as if they were in a bottomless snow abyss. They could clearly see the dark space behind the stone door. "Quick! Go in!" I saw an immortal light flash in the darkness behind the stone door. There must be a great treasure. This time, we must get something. More cultivators rushed over from all directions. Each of them had an excited expression as they rushed into the tomb. Then, gradually, the number of cultivators that rushed here decreased. "Go in?" Wishing Crocodile asked. Lin Tian nodded. "Let's go." He held Little Yi Tong's hand and walked into the tomb. In the blink of an eye, they stepped into the tomb. They saw that there were many tomb passages in the tomb, extending in all directions. The air was even colder, and there was a rotten smell. It was very unpleasant. "Are you cold?" Lin Tian asked Little Yi Tong. The little one shook her head and said, "No, I'm not cold." Wishing Crocodile flapped its wings and looked at Little Yi Tong. It said, "Although the little one is only 5 years old and in the spirit sea realm, her life force has become more powerful. Moreover, the divine eye of the sun has been formed. Her physique is stronger than that of ordinary airborne realm cultivators. She should be able to withstand this cold." Lin Tian glanced at it and did not say anything. He held Little Yi Tong's hand and walked down one of the tomb passages. The tomb passage was very wide. He held little Yi Tong's hand and walked very far away in no time. Arg! At that moment, there was a scream in front of them. It was very shrill, and there was a strong smell of blood. As far as the eye could see, there were cultivators targeted by evil spirits. In the blink of an eye, their internal organs were dug out, and they died very miserably. In the next moment, the evil spirit suddenly turned its head and stared at Lin Tianyi and the others. After letting out a ghostly howl, it rushed straight at them with strong yin qi. Golden light rushed out of Lin Tian's body and turned into a sword light that slashed forward, directly cutting the evil spirit into ashes. He then held little Yi Tong's hand and continued to walk forward. Gradually, they walked very far away. The yin qi in the air became thicker. Several corpses could be seen on the ground from time to time. They were either killed by humans or evil spirits. Blood stained the surface of the tomb red. Clang! Suddenly there was the sound of soldiers not far away, accompanied by very strong divine power fluctuations. At the same time, there was also a very terrifying aura of death in front of them. It was so thick that it was somewhat frightening. Lin Tian held Yi Tong's hand and walked forward. After walking for another 300 meters, they saw a woman in front of them fighting with a rotten corpse. There were dozens of precious weapons floating around her, all of them shining with cold light. The princess of the Yao clan. Whooshing Crocodile stared ahead and narrowed its eyes slightly. It seems that this girl is in trouble. That rotten corpse is not simple. It is a real demon. Chapter 964. Lin Tian looked in front of him. The Wuzhen ghost deity level zombie was surrounded by a deathly mist. It spat out poisonous light from its mouth, corroding the space inch by inch. The princess of the Yao family was forced to step back. Clang! 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 Next to the princess of the Yao clan, there were more than 10 treasures. Their combined attack was very frightening, but it was useless against the rotten corpse. It only created sparks of light as if they were slashing against a hard iron body. Roar! The zombie roared. Its sharp ghost claws were intertwined with dense dark light. With one claw, it shattered the dozens of precious weapons of the princess of the Yao family. In the next moment, the ghost deity level zombie released an even thicker deathly mist, enveloping the princess of the Yao family. It's over. Whooshing Crocodile saw this scene and couldn't help but shake its head. This deathly mist is very scary. There are even traces of precepts lingering inside. With the princess of the Yao family's current cultivation, she can't break this deathly mist. It's like falling into the ghost deity level zombie's food cage. She will be devoured in a few dozen breaths at most. In fact, what it said was true. The princess of the Yao family was indeed trapped in this deathly mist. She couldn't break it no matter how hard she tried. Her divine power and life force were quickly draining away, and many of her precious weapons were shattered. Roar! The zombie roared again. Its ghost claws shattered all the precious weapons of the princess of the Yao family. Then, the deathly mist in the surroundings gathered crazily in the middle like a tide. It pressed towards the princess of the Yao family as if it was going to corrode everything. Suddenly, even though the princess of the Yao family was at the third sky of the Great Path and was very powerful, she couldn't help but change her expression. Lin Tian looked at this scene with a glimmer of light in his eyes. He held Yi Tong with his left hand, and a golden sword light appeared in his right hand. With a wave of his hand, the golden sword light slashed forward. Clang! Accompanied by an ear-piercing sword sound, the golden sword light appeared beside the princess of the Yao family in the blink of an eye. It tore apart the thick deathly mist and sent the Wuzhen ghost deity flying. He cultivated the weapon-controlling technique. Although he obtained this precious technique from a tomb, this technique was still closely related to the Yao family. Now that he saw the Yao family's princess in danger, about to face a disaster, he didn't want to just sit by and watch. In front of the deathly mist, the princess of the Yao family was shocked. She looked at the direction of the golden sword light and saw Lin Tian, little Yi Tong, and Whooshing Crocodile. It's you! Seeing Lin Tian, she couldn't help but be shocked. In the past few days, Lin Tian had killed the holy princes of the Dark Heart Sword sect and the other two great sections. He had also killed the strongest experts of the 5 great sects, including the coiling dragon Holy Gate. He had also killed more than a dozen experts from the 8 great forces. He had disintegrated the True Moon Immortal cult, and he had killed the Wujin experts from the 8 great forces. His name had long spread throughout the heavenly region, and he was rumored to be the strongest expert of the younger generation. As the current successor of the Yao family, the princess of the Yao family naturally knew of Lin Tian. At this moment, an eerie roar sounded. The rotten corpse stood up in the distance, and its pupils turned blood red. It was very terrifying. It let out a ghostly howl, and like the friction of glass, it pounced on the princess of the Yao family again. The princess of the Yao family knew how terrifying the rotten corpse was, and she quickly retreated. Clang! The sword sound was ear-piercing, and it suppressed everything. The rotten corpse's movement towards the princess of the Yao family couldn't help but stop. Lin Tian moved again, and with a sweep of his right hand, he slashed out the heaven-piercing sword. This was one of the secret moves of the heaven-piercing sword manual, and it was equivalent to a great ability. It was extremely fast, and in the blink of an eye, it appeared in front of the rotten corpse. With a poof, it was chopped into pieces, leaving a pool of thick black blood on the ground. The princess of the Yao family was shocked again. She couldn't even escape from a powerful Wujin immortal demon, but now, it was actually chopped into pieces by a person of the same generation as her. This stunned her for a moment, and her eyes were filled with shock. However, she wasn't an ordinary person, and she quickly recovered from the shock. She walked in front of Lin Tian, and bowed to Lin Tian seriously. "Thank you for saving me." Lin Tian looked at her, and his expression was very calm. "Don't be in a hurry to thank me. Who knows, you might use your sword against me in the future," he said calmly. Once the Yao family found out that he had mastered the weapon control technique, the big shots of the Yao family would definitely not let him go. After all, that was the strongest celestial technique of the Yao family, and even within the Yao family, only the core members of the direct line of descent could cultivate it. How could the Yao family be happy that an outsider like him had mastered such a celestial technique? The princess of the Yao family frowned. "You saved my life, so how could I point my sword at you?" She couldn't understand Lin Tian's words. Lin Tian looked at her, and didn't explain anything. "In a few days, I will pay a visit to your Yao family," he said. As soon as he finished speaking, he pulled little Yitong deeper into the tomb. Wishing Crocodile curled its lips, and flapped its 5-colored wings to follow. The princess of the Yao family was moved again. "Pay a visit to my family?" She paused, and quickly followed. "What are you going to my family for?" "To have a heart-to-heart talk with your family head," Lin Tian said casually. "What?" The princess of the Yao family frowned again. Lin Tian glanced at her, but still didn't explain anything. He held little Yitong's hand and walked slowly through the dark mausoleum. His footsteps echoed in the air from time to time. Very quickly, he walked out over 300 meters. "Why are you following us?" He stopped and looked at the princess of the Yao family. "I also walked this tomb path," the princess of the Yao family said, and added, "and I walked this path first." Lin Tian thought for a moment, and it seemed to be true. So, he didn't say anything else, and continued to walk forward. As they walked deeper into the tomb, the air became colder, as if they were walking in a hell. The princess of the Yao family looked at Lin Tian as she walked, paused, and said to Lin Tian, "I am Yao Ming, what about you?" Lin Tian said casually. Yao Ming nodded and didn't say anything else. The group continued to walk forward. Not long after, a violent aura suddenly surged in front of them, and a monster beast covered in blood-red scales appeared. It had 3 eyes, a wolf-like body, and 4-inch-long fangs. Yao Ming obviously recognized this blood-scale monster beast, and her face changed. "Corpse-devouring beast!" The whooshing crocodile stared ahead and said, "We encountered this thing again. When we were in the 5th heaven, we were chased by this thing quite miserably." It stared ahead and said, However, this corpse-devouring beast is stronger than the one we encountered before. It's comparable to a half-step enlightenment realm powerhouse. Corpse-devouring beasts can only appear in the tombs of true powerhouses. They specialize in eating corpses, and they prefer the flesh and blood of living people. When Lin Tian, and the Bai siblings were training in the fifth heaven, they encountered a great Tao realm corpse-devouring beast in one of the tombs. At that time, they were chased very miserably. In front of them, the corpse-devouring beast's aura was violent and cold. It stared at Lin Tian and the others as if it had found its prey. Its 3 eyes were filled with ferocity, and with a low roar, it rushed towards the group of people like a bolt of lightning. Boom! Violent killing intent surged, and for a moment, the entire tomb trembled. In the blink of an eye, the corpse-devouring beast arrived in front of them. The cold aura it emitted made Yao Ming, a third heavenly layer supreme, tremble slightly. Lin Tian was expressionless. He waited until the corpse-devouring beast was really close to him before he made a move. He slapped it to the ground, then raised his right leg and stomped on it. Suddenly, the corpse-devouring beast screamed in pain. It struggled under Lin Tian's foot, erupting with an even more violent aura. Lin Tian raised his right leg and viciously stomped down again. This stomp was merciless, and the corpse-devouring beast was trampled into pieces. Blood flowed all over the ground. Yao Ming's eyes widened again. The corpse-devouring beast, which was comparable to a half-step enlightenment expert, was actually stomped to death by Lin Tian's foot. She stared at Lin Tian, and the shock in her eyes deepened. Lin Tian didn't care much. It was just a half-step enlightenment-level corpse-devouring beast. For the current him, it was really nothing. In fact, it was not much different from killing a third-level demonic beast. He pulled little Yitong and continued to walk into the depths of the tomb. Not long after they walked out, a shrill scream came from ahead. At the same time, it was mixed with chaotic divine power and yin qi. He didn't change his pace and quickly walked for more than 1,000 feet. He saw that the space in front of him had become very wide. Many tomb passages gathered in one place, and there was a dense group of Yin soldiers and Yin generals here. They were crazily killing the cultivators who walked to this place. Blood dyed a large area of the ground red. Ah! A cultivator screamed as his throat was bitten by a ferocious ghost. The blood on his body was cleanly devoured in the blink of an eye. These Yin soldiers all rushed out from the depths of the tomb. There were even Ghost King-level existences among them. A few ordinary cultivators couldn't stop them at all. They all retreated in panic and fled outside. Of course, there were also very powerful cultivators among them. They didn't care about these Yin soldiers and could even stop the Ghost Kings. They used their divine abilities to crush the Yin soldiers and ghosts one by one as they rushed towards the depths. Boom! Yin Qi billowed. At this time, a Ghost King-level evil monster stared at Lin Tian and the others and charged straight at them. Lin Tian's expression remained the same. Golden divine light shot out from his body and transformed into a large sword, shattering the Ghost King that was charging at him. At the same time, the unparalleled might of the sword wiped out a large number of ghosts in front of him, cleaving open a path. "Let's go," he said to the wishing crocodile. With that, he pulled little Yitong and continued to walk deeper into the tomb. The wishing crocodile casually followed beside them. Yao Ming paused for a moment before following him. At this time, there was only one path to the depths of the tomb. Chapter 965. The stone chamber was huge, and dozens of coffins were arranged in an orderly manner, causing the atmosphere in the stone chamber to seem somewhat stifling. Lin Tian looked at these coffins. In his sea of consciousness, the yin-yang lotus sea suddenly swayed, and strands of yin sunlight spread out. "Master, there are strange things in these coffins," little Yitong said softly. Lin Tian looked at little Yitong, and his gaze fell on her eyes. He couldn't help but smile slightly, thinking that her divine eyes were indeed extraordinary. It should be known that his current cultivation was at the 9th heavenly layer of the Great Tao, and he had the yin-yang lotus sea, which was an anomaly in his sea of consciousness that specialized in restraining demons and evil. At this time, he only felt that there might be evil in these coffins, but the little fellow spoke with such certainty. Obviously, she had already seen through the coffins. Yao Ming followed behind, and when she heard this, she was slightly surprised. She looked curiously at Yitong, who was beside Lin Tian. Then, her gaze suddenly fell on Yitong's eyes, and she immediately revealed a trace of surprise. What bright eyes! She didn't know that Yitong's eyes were the divine eyes of the sun, but she keenly felt that the little fellow's eyes were very unusual, very unusual. There were other cultivators in this stone chamber who had arrived before Lin Tian and the others. They were looking around, and at this time, they obviously heard little Yitong's voice. Many of them immediately looked in the direction of little Yitong, who had made the sound. Little brat, what strange thing is that? Don't speak nonsense. A bald cultivator with a scar on his face stared at little Yitong with a malicious expression. Speaking of which, a little brat like you actually dared to come here. Let me see who your master is, to actually bring you to such a place. The bald cultivator moved his gaze and looked at Lin Tian, who was holding little Yitong's hand. Then, his expression suddenly changed, and he staggered back, recognizing Lin Tian. You! These days, Lin Tian's reputation and appearance had long been spread in this heaven domain. Very few people didn't know him. At this time, seeing Lin Tian holding little Yitong's hand, the bald cultivator's eyes immediately revealed a panicked expression. At the same time, the other cultivators in this stone chamber also noticed Lin Tian, and they were all moved. Lin Tian coldly glanced at the bald cultivator. Watch your words. Yes, of course. The bald cultivator was in the immortal realm, and his cultivation was extraordinary. But at this time, he repeatedly nodded at Lin Tian, with a terrified expression of Lin Tian's face. This was a ruthless person who even destroyed a large sect like the True Moon Immortal Sect, and he actually described the child beside him as an egg yolk cub. At this time, he was naturally afraid that Lin Tian would attack him. Lin Tian glanced at the bald cultivator, then looked elsewhere. Although this bald cultivator's words were unpleasant to hear, it wasn't an unforgivable crime. He couldn't attack him just because of this. In this place, many cultivators looked at Lin Tian with fear, and at the same time, they carefully sized up this huge stone chamber. There's a stone door there. Suddenly, a cultivator spoke, pointing to the end of the stone chamber. Looking over, there was indeed a stone door there, and there were many images of birds and beasts engraved on it. Behind this should be the tomb owner's tomb. Someone was pleasantly surprised. In an instant, a group of cultivators surrounded the stone door, and someone directly attacked it, wanting to open it. However, the stone door was tightly shut, and these cultivators couldn't open it at all. Their divine abilities and secret techniques were also useless. Squeak! At this time, a strange sound was heard, like the claws of a wild beast scratching against glass, exceptionally ear-piercing. Immediately, many cultivators were instinctively shocked. Squeak! The same sound was heard again, and then the dozens of coffins in this huge stone chamber began to tremble. Waves of evil energy seeped out from the coffins. These coffins, there really are evil spirits inside. At this time, the expression of all the cultivators here changed. Lin Tian held little Yitong's hand and quietly stood in place. The yin-yang lotus in his mind swayed even more violently, and strands of yin light spread out like ripples, intertwining in his mind. Be careful, the things inside these coffins aren't simple. Conservatively speaking, they're at least at the ghost god level, he said to Wishing Crocodile. Just by standing here, it could cause the yin-yang lotus in his mind to move. It was clear that it wasn't a simple evil spirit. Wishing Crocodile heard his words and couldn't help but stare. There are more than 40 coffins in this place, and they're all ghost gods at the ghost god level. Lin Tian's face didn't change. He tilted his head and looked at a corner of the stone chamber. There, a coffin had already been shattered, and there was nothing inside. Wishing Crocodile followed his gaze and couldn't help but be slightly moved. He tilted his head and looked at Yao family's princess, Yao Ming. Yao Ming clearly knew what Lin Tian and Wishing Crocodile were thinking at this time. She whispered, "The rotten corpse I met earlier ran out of that shattered coffin." "Obviously," Lin Tian andao. With a rumbling sound, the dozens of coffins in this stone chamber shook even more violently. An even more turbulent yin qi interweaved. Then, with a cracking sound, the coffins collapsed one after another, and the rotten corpses stood up from the coffins. Suddenly, the cold yin qi interweaved in every corner of this stone chamber, causing the cultivators to tremble. This is it, someone trembled. Meanwhile, an entire 40+ rotting corpses stood up, and their bodies were coiled with extremely terrifying auras. They were like a few tens of death gods that had charged out from hell, and it caused all the cultivators to tremble as they felt the threat of death looming over them. More than 40 rotten corpses had blood-red eyes. A majestic fog of death interweaved, forcibly forming a black yin-qi barrier that enveloped the entire stone chamber, trapping all the cultivators in this stone chamber. Seeing the black barrier that suddenly formed, many cultivators were shocked. They immediately felt that they were isolated from the outside world and could no longer sense the aura outside the barrier. It was also at this time that the yin-qi surged, and the screams of ghosts were ear-piercing. The dozens of rotten corpses all moved, pouncing on the cultivators in the stone chamber. The billowing yin-qi of death seemed to want to corrode everything. In an instant someone was in trouble. His abdomen was pierced, and his internal organs were pulled out along with his intestines. Ah! A miserable scream rang out, and blood splashed out. In the blink of an eye, more than 10 cultivators in this stone chamber met with a great disaster. The rotten corpses that rushed out of the coffins tore them apart on the spot. Among them, there were even powerful cultivators at the 8th heaven of the connecting immortal realm. "Damn, they really are all Wujin realm ghost gods!" Wishing Crocodile stared. More than 40 Wujin realm ghost gods gathered together. This kind of formation was truly terrifying. Beside him, Yao Ming couldn't help but tremble. Although she was very powerful and was at the level of the Great Tao, she couldn't resist Wujin realm ghost gods. Previously, she had already fought a Wujin realm ghost god. She couldn't win at all and had almost died. At this time, there were more than 40 of such ferocious beasts in this stone chamber. How could she not be shocked? Lin Tian looked ahead and saw that more than half of the rotten corpses were rushing toward the stone door at the end of the stone chamber that was difficult to open. They were closing in on the cultivators nearby. The yin-qi outside their bodies was the strongest and most frightening. These coffins should have been left behind by the owner of the tomb. Before he buried himself, he must have done something to these rotting corpses, causing them to turn into powerful evil spirits in the future to protect his tomb at the final stage, he said. Wishing Crocodile narrowed his eyes and stared at the stone door at the end of the stone chamber that was difficult to open. He said, "It seems that the tomb owner's tomb is behind this stone door." Lin Tian nodded. This matter was already very obvious. At this time, an ear-piercing ghost howl rang out from ahead. A rotten corpse had fixed its eyes on Lin Tian and the others and directly rushed toward them. Immediately, rolling waves of yin energy surged towards him like a gust of cold wind. Golden divine light surged around Lin Tian's body, immediately protecting Yi Tong. Then, a golden sword ray rushed out from his body and appeared in front of the charging rotten corpse in the blink of an eye. With a puff, it cut the corpse into pieces. "Follow me. Don't go too far," he said to Wishing Crocodile and Yao Ming. He raised his head and looked ahead. Holding Yi Tong's hand, he walked toward the stone door at the end of the stone chamber that was difficult to open. Since they were already here and guessed that the tomb owner's tomb was behind the stone door, he naturally had to go in and take a look. Wishing Crocodile nodded. Yao Ming didn't dare to be careless and followed closely behind Lin Tian. "Roar!" A rotten corpse let out a ferocious roar, and 3 of them rushed toward the group. Lin Tian's left hand pulled little Yi Tong. With a wave of his right hand, he slashed out with the heaven-piercing sword, and 3 sword rays shot out. Puff! 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 3 black mists of blood exploded, and the 3 rotten corpses were instantly cut into pieces. Yao Ming couldn't help but tremble when she saw this scene. She was really shocked by Lin Tian's strength. 3 Wuxian realm ghosts rushed over together, but they were still killed so easily. Ah! Screams and cries of terror echoed in the stone chamber. Many cultivators' faces turned pale. Facing the Wuxian realm ghosts in the stone chamber, they didn't have the slightest ability to resist. One by one, they were killed, and blood splattered everywhere. We can't stop them. Run! At this time, many cultivators were afraid. Trembling, they rushed out of the stone chamber. However, in the next moment, screams rang out again. A cultivator crashed into the black barrier that enveloped the stone chamber, and the yin qi entered his body. His body instantly began to melt, and in the blink of an eye, he turned into a puddle of thick, stinking blood. Immediately, many cultivators who were rushing out stopped in their tracks and trembled. Afterward, some people tried to break the black barrier. They used various divine abilities and secret techniques, but it was useless. They couldn't destroy it. Roar! Ghost screams were ear-piercing, and the yin qi surged. In the stone chamber, dozens of Wuxian realm zombies had blood-red eyes. They were really like the gods of death. They crazily attacked the cultivators, causing blood to splatter everywhere. Screams rang out one after another. How could this be? How could there be so many corpses here? Are we all going to die here? I don't want to die. I don't want to die. Save me! The screams continued, and blood continued to splatter. At this moment, the cultivators in the stone chamber were completely overwhelmed by fear. Even some of the powerful cultivators in the 9th heaven of the connecting immortal realm were no exception. Their bodies kept trembling, and their faces were full of despair. At this time, a cultivator suddenly looked at Lin Tian and asked for help in fear. Fellow Taoists, save me! Save me! Instantly, the other cultivators in the stone chamber were shocked, and then they all looked at Lin Tian. Fellow Taoist, help us! Please, fellow Taoist! Save us! These cultivators knew that Lin Tian was very powerful. Even the true Moon Immortal sect was destroyed by him. At this time, all of them put their hopes on Lin Tian. They all trembled and looked at Lin Tian with hope and hope. At this time, Lin Tian was walking toward the stone door at the end of the stone chamber. When he saw these people crying for help, he couldn't help but stop and frown slightly. Then, in the next moment, he sighed slightly. The golden divine light around his body became thicker, and an extremely powerful sword was spread out. Clang! 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 The sound of the sword was ear-piercing. In the blink of an eye, hundreds of sword rays appeared around him and slashed in all directions, enveloping all the Wuxian realm zombies in the stone chamber. Chapter 966. Lin Tiansha had met many cultivators, but he was definitely not a cold-hearted person. Now that the cultivators in the stone room were asking him for help, and he had the ability to save them, he naturally would not stand by and do nothing. Golden divine light intertwined around his body as streaks of sword radiance shot out in all directions. The ear-piercing sound of the sword resonated throughout the entire stone room. Pft! 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 The black blood mist exploded one after another. In the blink of an eye, more than 10 ordinary Wuxian supernatural beings were killed, turning into pools of thick blood. For a moment, the cultivators in the stone room were delighted, shocked, and horrified. So strong! Someone said with a trembling voice. None of them could stop the supernatural beings' zombies that were comparable to Wuxian supernatural beings. They were like ants in front of these zombies. But now, these powerful zombies were so weak in Lin Tiansha's hands. They could not even withstand a single blow. Clang! The sound of the sword was ear-piercing. Lin Tiansha's expression was indifferent as the golden sword radiance kept slashing down. On the surface, these sword radiances looked like he was casually slashing out, but in reality, they were all sword forces that he used the High Heaven Sword Manual to activate. Every sword force was comparable to a powerful divine ability. Pft! 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 the black blood mist exploded. In this stone room, the powerful zombies fell one by one, and black blood flowed all over the floor. In the blink of an eye, more than 40 Wuxian supernatural beings in this stone room were killed, and only 3 of them were left. Their bodies were covered in blood. Roar! The 3 zombies roared ferociously. Their blood-red eyes had a tinge of blue, and the death mist around them became thicker. Then, in the next moment, there was a whooshing sound as the 3 zombies emitted a ferocious aura. They were like 3 death gods as they broke through space and pounced toward Lin Tiansha. These 3 are not simple. They are much stronger than ordinary Wuxian supernatural beings. Whooshing Crocodile frowned. Lin Tian could naturally see that. When he used the High Heaven Sword manual to slash out a dense sword aura, all the other zombies were killed except for these 3 zombies. The High Heaven Sword aura that he used only left some sword marks on their bodies. He waved his right hand slightly and activated the High Heaven Sword manual even more. An even more astonishing sword force appeared and slashed forward. It landed firmly on the bodies of the 3 rotting corpses, drawing out a large amount of black blood. However, it was still unable to destroy them. This scene caused the cultivators in the stone room to be shocked. They could clearly see that these 3 zombies were many times more terrifying than the other zombies. "Brat, can you handle it?" Whooshing Crocodile asked. "No problem." Lin Tian now. With a clang, a stone sword rushed out from his body. It was covered in strange patterns, and each of the patterns emitted a faint black light. It was like a sword of death. Immediately, a terrifying sword intent radiated, causing the entire stone room to shake violently. "This is a high-grade divine weapon!" The cultivators in the stone room cried out in surprise. Many people stared at the stone sword beside Lin Tian and could not help but be shocked. Even Yao Ming's heart trembled, and her face was full of shock. Her family was a top force in this heaven region, but the strongest weapon in her family was only a middle-grade divine weapon. However, Lin Tian actually had a high-grade divine weapon. Lin Tian unsheathed the stone sword. It was a high-quality divine weapon that he had obtained in the desolate god mausoleum of the heaven region not long ago. Below Saint artifacts, it could be said to be invincible. The moment it was unleashed, the might of the sword was terrifying, sending the 3 extremely powerful Wuxian demons flying. One of them even had an arm directly shattered. Such a scene caused all the cultivators to be unable to refrain from gasping, and all of them were shocked by this sword might. Clang! The sword hummed. Lin Tian controlled the stone sword with his mind. He activated the Ling Tian sword manual and swept away a ray of sword light. This ray of sword light was very bright. In an instant, it landed on the black barrier that enveloped the stone room. Immediately, the black barrier was shattered, and the stone room was connected to the outside world again. "Let's go," he said to the cultivators in the stone room. Immediately, the cultivators in the stone room trembled, and each of them revealed a surprised expression. Now, the black barrier formed by the Yin Qi of death was shattered by Lin Tian. They could leave now. "Thank you, fellow Taoist. Thank you, fellow Taoist. I will never forget the favor of saving my life. When we get out, I will definitely set up a longevity tablet for you." The cultivators bowed deeply to Lin Tian and thanked him profusely. Then, they rushed out of the stone room. Roar! A fierce roar resounded. One of the 3 rotting corpses stared at the cultivators who rushed out of the stone room. It spat out corpse poison from its mouth and pounced forward ferociously. However, at this moment, the ear-piercing sound of a sword rang out again. Lin Tian grabbed the stone sword beside him and directly used the Ling Tian 3 styles. A sharp ray of sword light appeared. In a flash, it jumped and appeared in front of the rotting corpse in the blink of an eye. It went straight into the corpse's open mouth. With a puff, black blood splattered and spilled all over the ground. This time, Lin Tian used the Ling Tian 3 styles, a high-grade divine weapon, to activate the Ling Tian 3 styles. Its killing power was naturally very terrifying. It directly chopped the rotting corpse into pieces and completely disappeared. "Fellow Taoist is mighty! Fellow Taoist, take care! Thank you, fellow Taoist. The cultivators ran out of the stone room and thanked Lin Tiandao continuously. In the blink of an eye, the cultivators in the stone room all ran away. Only Lin Tian, Wishing Crocodile, Yi Tong, and Yao Ming remained. Roar! Roar! 2 ferocious roars rang out. The last 2 rotting corpses roared wildly. The aura on their bodies became even more ferocious, like that of wild beasts. With 2 swooshing sounds, the 2 rotting corpses stared at Lin Tian. They spat out corpse poison from their mouths and charged at him again. Lin Tian shook the stone sword in his hand. The Ling Tian 1 sword and the Ling Tian 3 styles were used one after another, enveloping the 2 rotting corpses. Puff! Puff! 2 black blood mists exploded. The last 2 rotting corpses were also completely destroyed. For a moment, the stone room was filled with black and red blood stains. It was somewhat horrifying. Yao Ming stared at Lin Tian and couldn't help but tremble. More than 40 Wuxian demon gods were actually killed so easily. Lin Tian's expression was calm. With a wave of his right hand, he put away the stone sword. Others might think that it was very easy for him to kill the rotting corpses. It was as if he had just raised his hand and swung the sword. However, that wasn't the case. From the beginning until now, he had used at least 70% of his battle strength in every attack. Otherwise, it would be impossible for him to kill the Wuxian demon god-level rotting corpses so easily. Especially when he was dealing with the last 3 extremely powerful demon gods, he had already used 90% of his battle strength. Of course, there was no need for him to say such things out loud. Let's go. He held little Yutong's hand and walked to the end of the stone room where the stone door was difficult to open. He looked at it quietly. As far as the eye could see, this stone door didn't only have diagrams of birds and beasts. There were also imprints of mountains and rivers. It was very vast. Yao Ming stared at the stone door. Suddenly, her expression changed. She revealed a strange expression. This is a refined stone. It is very tough. Ordinary Great Tao experts wouldn't be able to break it. Also, there seems to be a very powerful Tao energy intertwining on this stone door. When the 2 are combined, I reckon that even ordinary Wuxian experts would have a hard time opening it. Lin Tian naturally saw this. However, he didn't care. He took a step forward, and a faint light lingered on his right hand. His movements were very simple. He raised his right hand and, using the primal Chaos Emperor's fist, directly punched the stone door in front of him. Suddenly, with a cracking sound, cracks appeared on the stone door. They spread out in all directions like a spider web. You! Yao Ming was shocked again. This kind of sturdy stone door was intertwined with a terrifying Tao energy. Ordinary Wuxian experts would have a hard time opening it. However, Lin Tian's fist had actually shattered it. Little girl, don't be shocked. At close range, if he brandished some kind of divine fist, even someone at the 5th heavenly layer of Wuxian would be easily shattered by him if the other party didn't resist. Wishing Crocodile said. Yao Ming was shocked again. Her face was full of disbelief. Lin Tian glanced at Wishing Crocodile and then looked at Yao Ming. Why are you still here? Yao Ming put away the shock on her face and said, I just want to see what's behind the stone door. I won't fight with you, and I can't win against you. Lin Tian glanced at her and didn't say anything. He lightly knocked on the stone door. Suddenly, the stone door, which was already full of cracks, collapsed, splashing up sand and dust. As far as the eye could see, there was another stone room behind the stone door. It was still very spacious, and there was a stone coffin in the middle. The rest of the room was filled with piles of precious items. There were precious weapons, precious medicines, precious pills, and jade slips with divine abilities. So many treasures! Yao Ming was slightly shocked. She casually saw a large blade with intertwining cold light. It was a mid-grade divine weapon. In other places, she saw other precious artifacts. Among them, there were several divine weapons. Very expensive! Whooshing Crocodile laughed. After flapping its wings and entering the stone door, it didn't hold back and directly grabbed a large amount of treasures. Among them, there was a mid-grade divine weapon, 3 low-grade divine weapons, and some other precious medicines and divine materials for refining artifacts. Lin Tian made his move as well, collecting the treasures piled up in the surroundings. He obtained 3 middle-grade divine weapons and 5 low-grade divine weapons. There were also quite a number of Dao soldier-level treasured weapons. Moreover, he also took many secret books of divine abilities. Among them, many were very powerful. There were even some secret techniques that had been lost for a long time. They were extremely extraordinary. The tomb owner was really extraordinary when he was alive. His collection is really rich. Wishing Crocodile clicked its tongue and said. Yao Ming stood at the side and stared at Lin Tian and Wishing Crocodile collecting the treasures. She couldn't help but feel a little envious. However, she was, after all, the successor of one of the top forces in this heaven domain. She quickly calmed down and just watched quietly. Lin Tian raised his hand and grabbed more treasures. He put them into the stone ring one by one. Then, after a dozen breaths, he grabbed a transparent pill bottle. There was a 3-colored pill inside, which made him slightly shocked. True acting divine pill! A light flashed in his eyes. He recognized this 3-colored pill. Wishing Crocodile and Yao Ming heard his voice and were immediately moved. The true acting divine pill is the kind of immortal pill that can allow a cultivator to directly enter the true comprehension realm from the half-step comprehension realm. Yao Ming couldn't help but exclaim. Chapter 967. As the descendant of the Yao family, one of the top forces in the 6th heaven, Yao Ming has naturally heard of the divine play pill. At this moment, when she heard Lin Tian mention these 4 words, her eyes were full of surprise. Yes. Lin Tian nodded. He has the medicine master's medicine book, and there are very few Baodan in the world that he doesn't know. At a glance, he could tell that the 3-colored pill in the transparent medicine bottle is the divine play pill. This divine pill can allow a cultivator to directly enter the enlightenment realm from the half-step enlightenment realm without any side effects. Good stuff. Wishing Crocodile's eyes lit up, but it soon curled its lips because there is only one such divine play pill in this place. Lin Tian's eyes flashed with a faint light as he carefully put away the Baodan. After entering this great tomb, only this divine play pill is of great use to him. A good harvest! He smiled. He is now in the 9th layer of the Great Tao, and after one more step, he will enter the half-step enlightenment realm. At that time, after taking this divine play pill and refining it seriously, he will be able to enter the enlightenment realm in one fell swoop, completing another great transformation in cultivation. Yao Ming stared at him putting away the divine play pill, and she couldn't help but feel a trace of envy. Such a Baodan, even her Yao family can't take out such a priceless treasure. You can take anything you want, Lin Tian said to her. No need. Yao Ming shook her head. Her life was saved by Lin Tian, and she didn't do anything after that. How can she take anything here? Seeing that she didn't want it, Lin Tian didn't say much and put away the other treasures in this tomb one by one. On the other side, Wishing Crocodile was naturally also taking action. It waved its big claws, grabbing treasures one after another. In the blink of an eye, dozens of breaths passed, and all the treasures in this tomb were collected by them. There are so many treasures! Wishing Crocodile clicked its tongue. In total, he obtained 7 sex divine weapons, several dozen Dao weapons, as well as some precious medicines and divine materials. Meanwhile, Lin Tian obtained even more, obtaining 11 divine weapons, more than 100 Dao weapons, more than 100 divine abilities, and other things. This was especially the case with that reality-developing pill, its significance and value extremely great. This could be considered their greatest harvest after entering this great tomb this time. At this time, it stared at the coffin in the middle of the stone room. This is the only coffin left. There was a stone coffin in the middle of the stone chamber. It was made of refined stone and was engraved with dense Dao patterns. Lin Tian looked at the sarcophagus, and raised his right hand slightly. He used his divine power to lift the lid of the sarcophagus, revealing a small gap. Immediately, an extremely strong stench of decay rushed out. It was extremely unpleasant. "All that's left is bone dust. There's nothing else," he said. After lifting the lid of the sarcophagus by a small gap, he could clearly see what was inside. He waved his right hand slightly and closed the lid. Wishing Crocodile pursed its lips, slightly disappointed. It originally wanted to find even better things in the tomb's owner's coffin. "Let's go out," Lin Tian said again. After entering this great tomb, they had already collected all the useful things. There was no need to stay in this place anymore. Immediately, he held little Yitong's hand and walked out of the tomb. Wishing Crocodile flapped its wings and followed behind. Yao Ming also walked out together. Following the path they came from, the group walked smoothly. It didn't take long for them to leave the great tomb and appear in the ruins outside. At a glance, they could see the crimson earth, and even further away, there were mountains. Lin Tian didn't stay in this space any longer. He brought little Yitong back the way they came, and Yao Ming also followed them. Not long after, they left the ruins, broke through the large river, and reappeared in the outside world. "Let's part here. We should meet again in the future," he said to Yao Ming. He controlled the Yao family's weapon-controlling art. After he entered the Enlightenment realm, he planned to go to the Yao family and explain this matter clearly. It wasn't that he was afraid of the Yao family, but the weapon-controlling art did belong to the Yao family. He should go and explain. Yao Ming looked at Lin Tian suspiciously, but she didn't ask much. She once again thanked Lin Tian for saving her life. Lin Tian didn't say anything else. He calmly glanced at Yao Ming, then held little Yitong's hand and walked away. Wishing Crocodile clicked its tongue and followed. Soon, the two people and the crocodile walked far away. "I feel that something is strange." Yao Ming stared at Lin Tian's back as he walked away, a strange expression on her face. "Forget it. Let's go home." She shook her head and soared into the sky, heading back to the Yao family. After leaving the river, Lin Tian held little Yitong's hand and walked. They didn't walk very fast, as if they were simply taking a stroll. Little Yitong walked beside Lin Tian. She seemed very quiet, and occasionally raised her head to look at the northern part of the heaven domain. "What's wrong?" Lin Tian naturally noticed that the little guy was looking at the northern part. That was where the Yi family was established. Yitong stammered, her eyes becoming a little wet. "Daddy and Mommy's ashes and tomb are in my old home." After walking through a large tomb, the little guy started to miss her deceased parents again. She couldn't help but feel sad again. Lin Tian rubbed the little guy's head, feeling a little sorry for her. "It's okay. Master will bring you to get them back," he said. Golden divine light spread out from his body. He used this divine light to wrap little Yitong and flew towards the Yi family. Wishing Crocodile flapped its 5-colored wings and followed them. Not long after, the two people and one crocodile appeared in front of a huge mansion. They could see many pavilions inside. It was the Yi family. As usual, there were several Yi family disciples standing guard outside the Yi family's courtyard. Each of them held a long spear in their hands. Lin Tian brought Yitong back and walked towards the Yi family. The Yi family disciples standing guard outside noticed someone approaching and were about to step forward to ask. However, their expressions quickly changed when they saw that it was Lin Tian, little Yitong, and Wishing Crocodile. "Young master!" The Yi family disciples were happy to see little Yitong. Then, they noticed Yitong's bright eyes. "Young master, your eyes!" A few days ago, Yitong's eyes had been gouged out. The ordinary disciples of the Yi family all knew about this. Now that they saw Yitong's eyes again and that they were even brighter than before, they couldn't help but be surprised and happy. However, in the next moment, the Yi family disciples couldn't help but tremble. They all noticed Lin Tian, who was holding Yitong's hand. Staring at Lin Tian, the Yi family disciples were speechless. During this period of time, they had heard too many rumors about Lin Tian, especially about how he had disintegrated the True Moon Immortal cult. Their faces were filled with fear and respect. "I want to go in with Master to retrieve Father and Mother's ashes," Is that okay? Little Yutong spoke at this moment. Her little face looked sad. The expressions of the disciples of the Yi clan instantly dimmed slightly when they heard this. Many amongst them had received kindness from Yutong's parents in the past. Soon, the Yi family disciples regained their senses and hurriedly stepped aside. Young master, please come in. The Yi family disciples loved and respected the 5-year-old Yutong from the bottom of their hearts. Thank you, little Yutong said, raising his head to look at Lin Tian. Lin Tian nodded. Let's go. He pulled the little girl and walked straight into the Yi family. Wishing Crocodile harumphed. Clearly, he didn't like this place. The spiritual energy in the Yi family was extraordinary. There were many pavilions and buildings. There were also many strange stones and immortal plants. It was an extraordinary sight. Lin Tian led little Yutong into the Yi family. Very soon, they attracted the attention of the entire Yi family. The Yi family's patriarch and the grand elders all walked out. Little Tong! The Yi family's patriarch called out. When he saw Yutong's eyes brighten, he realized that this was Yutong's own sun god eyes. He couldn't help but tremble slightly. Beside him, the Yi family's grand elders couldn't help but tremble. Naturally, they also saw this. Yutong's sun god eyes had been reconnected. Furthermore, they were even more powerful than before. It seemed like they could see through everything. This made them involuntarily look at Lin Tian next to Yutong. Then, they couldn't help but tremble again. They had heard of Lin Tian's destruction of the True Moon Immortal Sect. They were the ones who knew best why Lin Tian wanted to destroy the True Moon Immortal Sect. Lin Tian charged into the True Moon Immortal Sect alone and really took back the Sun God eyes that Yutong had brought to the True Moon Immortal Sect. Moreover, he reconnected the Sun God eyes for Yutong in perfect condition. Lin Tian was even stronger than before. This level of strength shocked them. Great Patriarch, Grand Patriarch, Second Patriarch, Third Patriarch, Fourth Patriarch, Fifth Patriarch. Little Yutong called out the Yi family's ancestors one by one. Wishing Crocodile snorted again, thinking that these people weren't worthy of the little guy's respect. It didn't forget that when it came to the Yi family with Lin Tian, the little guy who lost its parents and eyes was left alone in a cold little room by the Yi family. Meanwhile, the one who took the sun god eyes was protected by a group of people. Moreover, after knowing the truth, they all stopped Lin Tian from taking the sun god eyes back for the little guy. They were worried that the sun god eyes would be damaged after being taken out of Yi Huaxing's body. They only cared about the sun god eyes and didn't care about the little guy at all. Lin Tian clearly didn't like these people. He naturally didn't forget what Wishing Crocodile remembered. I'll bring him back and take away Yi Qing and Qin Lin's ashes. His expression was indifferent. That was all he said. After saying that, he didn't pay any attention to the Yi family's ancestors and the others. With a sweep of his powerful divine sense, he found the location of Yi Qing and Qin Lin's graves. They were buried in a small forest in the deepest part of the Yi family. He pulled little Yutong and walked towards the small forest. Soon, they appeared in front of Yi Qing and Qin Lin's graves. The couple was buried together. There was only one grave. It wasn't simple, nor was it luxurious. It was surrounded by lush trees. When little Yutong saw her parents' graves again, she couldn't help but cry. Soon, her whole face was wet. Daddy, Mommy! The little guy cried, heartbroken. Then, he slowly dug the soil behind the tombstone with his little hands. Chapter 968. Yutong wept. Her tears flowed uncontrollably, dripping onto the ground. Her bare hands dug out the soil on her parents' coffins bit by bit. Her hands soon became very dirty, and her clothes were also covered in dirt. Moreover, because she was too sad, she didn't circulate her inner energy or physical strength. Her hands were soon injured, and blood flowed out. Lin Tian stood silently to the side, watching quietly. The Yi family's patriarch and the others soon arrived. Seeing little Yutong in such a state, they couldn't help but feel sad. They all quickly walked towards her. Back off, Lin Tianlin calmly said. The Yi family's patriarch and the others immediately stopped in their tracks. The Yi family's patriarch said, "We only want to help her. There's no need." Lin Tian now. He stood quietly in place, not allowing the Yi family's patriarch and the others to step forward. He didn't help either. He only watched as little Yi Tong dug out the soil on Yi Qing and Qin Lin's coffins. His heart ached for his disciple, but Yi Tong's parents were in the tomb. If she wanted to retrieve her parents' ashes and dig out the soil, she should do it herself. This was filial piety. The Yi family's patriarch wanted to say something, but he couldn't find anything to say. He just stood there. "Daddy, Mommy!" Little Yi Tong wept. Her little hands were stained with blood as she dug out the soil. In the blink of an eye, 6 hours passed. Little Yi Tong's hands were stained with even more blood. She finally dug out the soil completely, revealing a green wooden coffin. Sob. I haven't grown up yet. I still want to be loved by Daddy and Mommy, just like before. Sob. The little girl lay on top of the coffin and cried, her body twitching. Lin Tian stood to the side. He didn't go forward to comfort her. He just silently watched her. Whooshing Crocodile also didn't go forward. He just watched quietly. The Yi family's patriarch and the others wanted to go forward, but when they saw Lin Tianling's indifferent gaze, they didn't dare to do so. Woo! Little Yi Tong wept. Another hour passed before she finally used all her strength to circulate the Sun Heart Sutra passed down by Lin Tian. She slowly opened the lid of the green wooden coffin. The Yi family's patriarch and the others couldn't help but be shocked by this scene. The lid of the green wooden coffin weighed several hundred kilograms, but the 5-year-old little Yi Tong was actually able to open it effortlessly, shocking them all. It was also at this time that they discovered that little Yi Tong's cultivation had already reached the Sea of Consciousness realm. This? Their eyes were filled with shock. Under normal circumstances, a 5-year-old child wouldn't even be able to truly embark on the path of cultivation. But now, the 5-year-old little Yi Tong had actually reached the Sea of Consciousness realm. She was even stronger than some of the younger disciples in their family. They couldn't help but look at Lin Tian. They couldn't help but tremble. They didn't need to think to know that all of this was because of Lin Tian. Lin Tian must have done something special on little Yi Tong's body and meridians. Otherwise, the 5-year-old little Yi Tong definitely wouldn't have been able to reach the Sea of Consciousness realm. She wouldn't have been able to withstand such a high level of cultivation. They were shocked. Lin Tian wasn't just powerful in battle. He also possessed other shocking techniques. Daddy, Mommy! Little Yi Tong's cries didn't stop. She picked up Yi Qing and Qin Lin's urn of ashes from the coffin and hugged it to her chest like a precious treasure. Tears dripped down her cheeks. Hearing these cries, the Yi family's patriarch and the others recovered from their shock at Lin Tian. When they looked at little Yi Tong, their expressions were gloomy. None of them felt good. At this time, Lin Tian moved. He slowly walked in front of little Yi Tong. Master! Little Yi Tong looked up at Lin Tian, her face streaked with tears. Lin Tian didn't say anything. He just rubbed the little girl's head. Let's go, he said to little Yi Tong. Little Yi Tong nodded with tears streaming down her face. She paused, put down her parents' urn of ashes, and looked at the Yi family's patriarch and the others. Facing the Yi family's patriarch and the others, the little girl knelt down and cowed out to them. Patriarch, great-grandfather, second-grandfather, third-grandfather, ninth-grandfather, little Tong will leave now. In the future, I will come back to see you. The Yi family's patriarch and the others trembled. When they saw little Yi Tong like this, their eyes became wet and tears streamed down their cheeks. Good child! Good child! The Yi family's patriarch stepped forward and personally helped little Yi Tong up. We have let you down. We have let your parents down. We. The Yi family's patriarch wept. When he thought about how obedient, sensible, and filial little Yi Tong was, and what had happened to her in the Yi family not too long ago, he felt his heart ache and regret. The little fellow in front of him was his closest descendant, yet he had suffered such a great calamity in his own clan. At that time, they only thought about the sun god's eye and did not consider the feelings of the little fellow. They had deeply hurt the little fellow. The Yi family's grand elders also stepped forward. Some of them wiped their tears and looked at the little girl with guilt. Humph! Wishing Crocodile stared at them and sneered. He clearly didn't have a good impression of the Yi family. Lin Tian stood to one side with a calm expression as he waited for little Yi Tong. Little Yi Tong bowed to the Yi family's patriarch and the others. Then she carefully picked up the urn containing her parents' ashes and walked over to Lin Tian with tears in her eyes. She called out, "Master!" Lin Tian nodded and led the little girl out of the Yi family. "Little brother!" The Yi family's patriarch called out to Lin Tian and said in a trembling voice, "Little Tong, we'll have to trouble you from now on." The Yi family's patriarch knew that even though Yi Tong was a direct descendant of the Yi family, it was impossible for Lin Tian to return little Yi Tong to the Yi family. Besides, with her parents gone, little Yi Tong probably didn't want to stay with the Yi family. More importantly, they really didn't have the face to ask the little girl to stay at a time like this. "I will naturally take good care of my disciple. There's no need for you to say anything else." Lin Tian's voice was cold and indifferent. A faint golden light rushed out of his body and enveloped little Yi Tong. Then, he rose into the air and headed out of the Yi family. Wishing Crocodile snorted and flapped its 5-colored wings to catch up. In the blink of an eye, the two of them and the crocodile were already far away. "I'm ashamed. I'm ashamed." The Yi family's patriarch looked in the direction that Lin Tian had left with little Yi Tong. Tears streamed down his face, and his body couldn't help but tremble. Lin Tian led little Yi Tong away from the Yi family. Not long after, they traveled quite a distance and landed on a small hill. Little Yi Tong hugged the urn containing her parents' ashes and wept. She looked very sad. "Master is still here." Lin Tian Andal. Golden light radiated from his body and enveloped little Yi Tong's hands. Soon, the wounds on her hands were healed. At the same time, he used his divine power to wipe away all the dirt on her clothes. Then, he waved his right hand and a stone ring appeared. There were at least a few hundred cubic meters inside. He put it on little Yi Tong and used his divine sense to imprint the method of using the stone ring into her mind. "Put the urn into the stone ring. Don't be careful and break it," he said to little Yi Tong. Little Yi Tong choked with sobs and nodded. She wiped away the tears on her face and used her divine sense to put away the urn containing her parents' ashes. "Master." She raised her head and looked at Lin Tian. She was very sad. "It will pass." Lin Tian rubbed the little girl's head. "Master will take you around." He took little Yi Tong to walk in the small mountain forest on foot. He took the little girl to see the mountains, the water, the grass, the trees, the rivers, the clouds, the birds, and the birds. He was trying to dilute the little girl's sadness and at the same time, train his own state of mind. In the blink of an eye, 2 months passed. In these 2 months, he took little Yi Tong to many places and saw many sights. In the beginning, the little girl would take out her parents' urn from time to time and cry. Then, as time passed, the little girl became much better. Gradually, she walked out of the pain of losing her parents. Sometimes, Wishing Crocodile would tease her, and she would smile. "Uncle Crocodile, you're flying so high!" Little Yi Tong's clear voice came from high up in the sky. Wishing Crocodile carried her, and flew a few hundred feet into the sky. Lin Tian stood in the distance, and saw that little Yi Tong was becoming more and more cheerful. She was gradually regaining her former personality. He could not help but smile. "Time can dilute everything," he whispered. A gentle breeze swept past and rolled up the black hair in front of his forehead. His eyes became very peaceful, but they were also somewhat deep. In these 2 months, he took the little girl to many places and saw many things. This allowed the little girl to gradually walk out of the pain of losing her parents. At the same time, his state of mind became more and more peaceful. The aura outside his body became more and more inward. When he stood quietly, almost no one could tell that he was a powerful cultivator of the Great Path. Facing Wishing Crocodile, who was carrying little Yi Tong, he smiled and walked up to it. He called out to the girl and Crocodile to go somewhere else. After that, he did not do anything else. He continued to take little Yutong to see the scenery. They were almost always walking. In the blink of an eye, another month passed. At this time, Yutong had truly walked out of the pain of losing her parents. She became the same as before. There was always a smile on her little face. It was also on this day that Lin Tian took the little girl into a lush forest. The demonic aura was very strong. There were many powerful monsters walking through the forest. The weakest one was comparable to the Sea of Consciousness realm. There were also many great monsters in the airborne realm. Let's go to battle. He brought the little girl here. Golden divine light surged and wrapped the little girl. He directly threw her into the group of monsters. Although he loved the little girl, he would not spoil her too much. Since she was his disciple, she was destined to live for battle. On the path of cultivation, he would only treat her strictly. Now 3 months had passed. The little girl had walked out of the pain of losing her parents. She could begin to truly move forward on the path of cultivation. She needed to start fighting. Roar! Roar! In the old forest, many monsters saw little Yutong appear in their field of vision. They immediately roared and all of them pounced on her. For these monsters, at this time, little Yutong was obviously their food. Little Yutong was a little scared at first, but she soon became fearless. She knew that Lin Tian was tempering her cultivation. She did not make a fuss. She laboriously channeled the Heart Sutra of the Sun and faced the monsters that pounced on her with her bare hands. Kid, you didn't even teach her the simplest of martial arts techniques. You didn't even give her a weapon. Is this really okay? Wishing Crocodile rolled his eyes and said. Lin Tian was very calm. The Eye of the Sun is her most powerful technique and weapon. Let her get used to the divine Eye of the Sun for the time being. When she reaches the airborne realm, she should be able to fully master the Eye of the Sun. By then, she should be able to cultivate the secret arts of the magic. Wishing Crocodile thought about it, and could not help but nod. Well, it makes sense to cultivate oneself first. Roar! In front, the monsters roared and pounced on little Yutong one by one. All of them were ferocious. Little Yutong only cultivated the Heart Sutra of the Sun and the Nirvana of the Sun. She did not know anything about offensive martial arts, defensive movement techniques, or secret arts of the magic. She could only fight with the monsters barehanded. She kept getting injured from the beginning. If it were not for her physique comparable to that of an airborne realm expert, her cultivation of the Sea of Consciousness realm, and the Nirvana of the Sun protecting her body, she would have been lying on the ground. However, the little guy knew that Lin Tian was tempering her cultivation. She was very strong. She did not cry out when she was injured and bleeding. She gritted her teeth and fought. Gradually, the little guy's eyes became brighter and brighter. The divine Eye of the Sun was opened, and the situation was improved. The battle became smoother and smoother. From time to time, she would overturn the monsters. Not bad! Wishing Crocodile could not help but praise in the distance. Lin Tian stood to the side, watching little Yutong fight with the monsters. The battle was getting smoother and smoother. Light gradually intertwined in his calm eyes. Thinking about it, I can cultivate that technique, the divine Eye of the Illusion Breaker. Chapter 969. The Delusion Breaker Divine Eyes was the most profound and quintessential divine art recorded in the Dragon Burial scripture. Once one cultivated this pair of divine eyes, one would be able to see through many major forces in the world. One would be able to see the number of spirit veins and immortal veins under a piece of land. Moreover, this pair of eyes could see through many other things. For example, there were some powerful transformation techniques in heaven and earth. After cultivation, one could change their true appearance into other things. Divine perception could not see through them, but the delusion breaker eyes could. Moreover, in some special places, divine perception would be suppressed. However, the delusion breaker eyes could not be suppressed. They could see through many mysterious mists. Moreover, cultivating the eyes of delusion breaker had a marvelous effect in battle. They could see through the changes of many techniques, and could even predict the opponent's next move with this pair of eyes. From there, they could react in advance. It was very shocking. When Lin Tian first obtained the dragon burial scripture, he wanted to cultivate this technique. However, this technique's requirements were too high. If one cultivated it forcefully without sufficient cultivation, they would only suffer a backlash. Therefore, Lin Tianyi did not cultivate this precious technique. Until now, when he came into contact with little Yitong's divine sun eyes, he began to think that he could cultivate the delusion breaker eyes. Look after Yitong and protect her. Of course, don't do anything before she is in a life or death situation, he said to the wishing crocodile. He took a step back and retreated to a huge old tree. He sat down cross-legged. The wishing crocodile was a little suspicious. As he watched little Yitong's battle, he looked at Lin Tian. What are you doing? Cultivating. Lin Tian now. When he came here, he had already used his divine perception to scan the vicinity of the forest. He found that very few cultivators came here. Moreover, the strongest demon beasts in the forest were only at the immortal realm. They were not very strong. With the wishing crocodile here, it was enough to deal with them. He cultivated the delusion breaker eyes here and did not need to worry about anything. Sitting cross-legged on the old tree, birds and beasts chirped around him. He did not say anything to the wishing crocodile. He closed his eyes. Buzz! Faint golden divine light intertwined as the blood in his body began to boil. Strands of blood gushed toward his eyes. Immediately after, the Tao Law manifested outside his body. It gradually moved upwards and entered his eyes through the gaps between his closed eyes. After that, he began to circulate the dragon burial scripture to the strongest level in history. Strands of dragon patterns appeared and surrounded his body. Then they began to surge upward and entered his eyes along with the great Tao. Illusionary heaven and earth, eyes break all spells, he whispered in his heart. The divine eye of delusion breaker was a super divine ability. It could also be called a human body treasury. It was a divine ability that was released through special means from the endless potential sealed in the deepest part of one's flesh and blood. Now, his cultivation was to use his own blood qi, the laws of Tao, and the dragon markings to open this human body treasury, and then cultivate the divine eye of delusion breaker. Using powerful blood qi to attack his eyes and using the laws of Tao to nourish and temper it, the potential contained in the human body's eyes could be released without limit. It was like trying to expand a small space of 100 cubic meters into a large space of 1,000 cubic meters. Then, using special means to refine the dragon markings into the eyes that would release even more potential. This was the cultivation of the divine eye of delusion. This cultivation process seems simple, but it was actually very difficult and dangerous. A single mistake could cause a terrifying Tao injury. It could even lead to the permanent destruction of one's eyes. One's body would not be able to heal, and external forces would not be able to heal it. Buzz! Strands of divine light, laws of Tao, and dragon markings intertwined outside his body, making him appear illusory and hazy. Lin Tian appeared to be very quiet. His divine consciousness was completely immersed in his body. He mobilized his blood qi and the laws of Tao to gather in his eyes. At the same time, the dragon markings surged as he carefully cultivated according to the cultivation method recorded in the dragon burial scripture. Buzz! Golden divine light surged outside his body. It jumped from time to time. The light of the laws of Tao and the dragon markings intertwined. Just like that, time passed by minute by minute. Yitong was still fighting at the front, fighting with many monsters. She gradually entered the best state of the battle, and the battle became smoother and smoother. The whooshing crocodile looked in Yitong's direction and nodded slightly. Then, it looked at Lin Tian, who was cultivating at the side. This guy, what kind of technique is he cultivating? Why are the laws of Tao and dragon markings all gathering in his eyes? It muttered, a little puzzled. However, although it was a little puzzled, it quietly stood guard at the side. Its divine consciousness covered all the space within a radius of 1,000 feet. Once there was any special movement within a radius of 1,000 feet, it would be able to sense it at the first moment. Time continued to pass. Gradually, the sky darkened. Stars appeared in the sky, sprinkling the sky with silver light. Little Yi Tong was still fighting not far away. Until now, there were already dozens of monsters lying on the ground. Among them, there was even a great monster in the early stage of the flight realm. It was beaten to the ground by the little guy's fist and could not stand up. At the same time, on the thick branches of the old tree in the distance, the golden divine light outside Lin Tian's body became denser. The laws of Tao and dragon markings became more powerful, emitting rays of bright light, illuminating his surroundings. He used his blood qi and the laws of Tao to attack his eyes, tempering them, making his eyes brighter. He used his strongest strength to let his eyes release their potential. At the same time, he completely surrounded his eyes with dragon markings, refining them bit by bit. Soon, the stars disappeared, and the sun slowly rose in the east. A new day had begun, and the morning sunlight was very charming. The gentle rays of light scattered on this boundless land, causing people to be lost in wild and fanciful thoughts. He's still cultivating. Wishing Crocodile looked at Lin Tian, and could not help but curl its lips. It glanced at little Yi Tong, who was still fighting not far away. Seeing that the little guy still had energy, it did not let the little guy stop. Instead, it looked at Lin Tian and protected Lin Tian. Its divine consciousness was still covering all the space within a radius of 1,000 feet. Soon, the sun rose in the east, rising higher into the sky. It was noon of the day. Buzz! At this moment, Lin Tian slowly opened his eyes. His eyes contained an amazing divine light, and there were strands of dragon markings intertwined on his eyes. Wishing Crocodile could not help but be shocked. It had seen the light of dragon markings in Lin Tian's eyes before, but this time, it was obviously different from before. At this time, the dragon markings in Lin Tian's eyes seemed to be engraved on his pupils. Moreover, the divine light emitted from Lin Tian's eyes was too unusual, making it suddenly feel a chill down its spine. "What are you doing?" it could not help but ask. At this moment, it acutely sensed that Lin Tian's eyes were different from before, and it made its heart palpitate slightly. Lin Tian did not speak. Although his eyes were open, his eyelids were trembling slightly, as if he had encountered some big trouble. Divine light intertwined in his eyes, and the dragon markings flickered, making one's heart tremble. However, after that, it gradually became a little chaotic, as if a stone had suddenly been thrown into a calm lake. Everything was in a mess. Wishing Crocodile's expression changed again. It clearly sensed that Lin Tian's aura had become unstable, as if he had gone mad. It frowned, not knowing what Lin Tian was doing, and could only stand aside and guard. Soon, another 10 breaths passed. Lin Tian's aura became even more chaotic, and his essence, qi, and spirit became even more unstable. Cough! His Taoist body trembled, and he coughed out a mouthful of essence blood. Traces of blood also flowed down from the corner of his eyes. This shocked Wishing Crocodile, and it hurriedly moved over. "Kid Lin, what exactly are you cultivating? It's fine if you're coughing up blood, but why are your eyes bleeding as well?" Lin Tian shook his head and exhaled a mouthful of turbid air. He wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth and dried the blood from the corner of his eyes. He originally thought that although the divine eyes of Delusion Breaker were difficult to cultivate, with his current cultivation level of the 9th heaven of the Great Path, his life origin that had been upgraded twice, and his spirit that had improved by leaps and bounds, he should be able to cultivate the divine eyes of Delusion Breaker smoothly. However, when he actually cultivated it, he realized that he had been too naive. The cultivation of this pair of divine eyes of Delusion Breaker was hundreds and thousands of times more difficult than he had imagined. This was the first time he had cultivated it, and he was directly injured. His essence, qi, and spirit became chaotic. At this time, his eyes hurt as if they were being burned by a raging fire, and even his spirit was trembling. With a wave of his right hand, he took out a jade container filled with the soul-absorbing pond's water. He drank some of it, then ran the Sun Heart Sutra to refine it, allowing the power of the soul-absorbing pond's water to flow through his internal organs, stabilizing his essence, chi, and spirit. Wishing Crocodile's face changed slightly. You suffered a Tao injury while cultivating? The soul-absorbing pond's water is very precious and rare. It can heal Tao injuries that are difficult to heal by external forces. At this moment, seeing Lin Tian drinking the soul-absorbing pond's water, it naturally guessed that Lin Tian had suffered some Tao injuries. A little. Lin Tian now. The impact of cultivating the divine eyes of Delusion Breaker for the first time was indeed not small. Not only was his essence, chi, and spirit damaged, but he also suffered some Tao injuries. However, fortunately, he once obtained the soul-absorbing pond's water in the fourth heaven. This kind of Tao injury that is difficult to heal was not a big problem for him. Buzz! Divine light spots surrounded his body as he ran the Sun Heart Sutra to refine the soul-absorbing pond's water. His injured essence, chi, and spirit gradually stabilized, and the Tao injuries caused by cultivating the divine eyes of Delusion Breaker also healed quickly. Wishing Crocodile looked at him, frowning deeply, and asked, Kid, what are you cultivating? How did you get a Tao injury? Lin Tianwei paused slightly. He didn't hide anything from Wishing Crocodile, and briefly mentioned the divine eyes of Delusion Breaker. Divine eyes of Delusion Breaker? Wishing Crocodile was shocked. Lord Crocodile once saw a record in an unofficial history. It said that Celestial Lord Zonglong once fought with the great achievement of Yin Ai and Yang Ai at the same time. Although he won all of them, he also gained some enlightenment from the two. Then, in his later years, he combined his own Tao of Dragon and created a powerful eye technique. It is said that its power is unpredictable and very terrifying. It looked at Lin Tian with widened eyes. Your so-called divine eyes of Delusion Breaker, is it the eye technique created by Celestial Lord Zonglong in his later years? Is there really such a great ability in the Dragon Burial scripture? Chapter 970. The Wishing Crocodile stared at Lin Tian and asked. It was really a little shocked. Was there really a supreme eye technique in the Dragon Burial scripture? Yes. Lin Tian nodded and gave an affirmative answer. This made the Wishing Crocodile couldn't help but be moved. Its face was full of surprise. No wonder when you were cultivating before, blood chi, Tao law, and dragon patterns all went to your eyes. No wonder when you opened your eyes, Lord Crocodile felt some changes in your eyes, which made Lord Crocodile slightly palpitate. It turns out that you were cultivating the eye technique created by Celestial Venerable Dragon Burial in his later years. This, it stared and said. According to the records in the unofficial history that it had seen, the eye technique created by Celestial Venerable Dragon Burial in his later years was very terrifying. It combined the essential understanding of Yin Ai and Yang Ai. Once cultivated, it was no worse than Yin Ai or regular Yang Ai. It was a little shocked. It paused, looked up and down at Lin Tian, and asked, Then, how is your cultivation? It's very difficult to cultivate. I failed. Lin Tian shook his head and said, However, I still gained a little. Although he didn't succeed in cultivating the Delusion Breaker divine eyes for the first time and suffered some Tao injuries, it wasn't like he didn't gain anything. The potential of his eyes was more excavated. In essence, his eyes were a little stronger. With your ninth heaven of the Great Path, you can kill a cultivator of the second heaven of Wujin realm. Is it very difficult to cultivate? The Wishing Crocodile was surprised. Didn't you see me vomit blood? Didn't you know that I suffered a Tao injury? Lin Tian now. The Wishing Crocodile rolled its eyes and couldn't help but feel a little emotional. How should I say this? It's really a great technique created by Celestial Venerable Dragon Burial in his later years. With your abnormal ability, it's actually so difficult to cultivate, and you even suffered a Tao injury. If this was given to an ordinary person, it's estimated that a half-step Nirvana cultivator might be injured. It's possible. Lin Tian now. It wasn't that he was arrogant, but the difficulty of cultivating the Delusion Breaker divine eyes was indeed shocking and beyond imagination. "Aya, Master, Uncle Croc, help!" Suddenly, a crisp sound rang out. In the distance, Yi Tong was covered in mud and blood. She was being chased by a 10-meter-tall vicious beast and was almost swallowed several times. Lin Tian and Wishing Crocodile both tilted their heads to look over at the same time. They discovered that the 3-zhang-tall ferocious beast was at the pinnacle of the Zephyr realm. With little Yi Tong's current strength, even if her Eye of the Sun was at the initial stage, it was still impossible for her to block it. Furthermore, the little fellow had already battled with the other demonic beasts for a long time. Her essence, energy, and spirit had weakened a lot, and her true essence was almost depleted. She could only flee in a sorry state. Lin Tian smiled and pointed a finger forward, sending the 3-meter-tall vicious beast flying dozens of meters away. Then, he stood up and, along with the Wishing Crocodile, appeared in front of little Yi Tong in a flash. "Master!" Little Yi Tong grabbed Lin Tian's trousers. Her entire body was dirty, and she had a pitiful expression. Lin Tian raised his hand, and a golden divine light surged. In the blink of an eye, all the mud and dirt on little Yi Tong's body were wiped away by his divine power. At the same time, the injuries on little Yi Tong's body were healed in an instant. For a moment, the little fellow's essence, energy, and spirit suddenly surged. The true essence in her body vibrated, and the space between her eyebrows lit up. With a rumble, a small hurricane swept out, and it only calmed down after dozens of breaths. This caused the little fellow to widen her eyes and clench her small hands. Then, she looked at Lin Tian and said as if she was presenting a treasure. "Master, I have reached the 2nd level of the Knowledge Sea." "Not bad." Lin Tian nodded with a smile and gave his approval. He looked around and found that there were many demonic beasts lying on the ground. Among them, there were several great beasts, and they were all comparable to experts in the initial stage of the Zephyr realm. At the same time, there were many broken trees scattered on the ground. It could be seen that since yesterday, little Yi Tong had been working hard to fight with the demonic beasts in the vicinity, and did not slack off at all. He rubbed the little fellow's head again, and then let the little fellow follow him out of the forest. After a day and night of cultivation, the little fellow was quite tired. He was going to take the little fellow for a walk and rest. At the same time, he also wanted to see more of the mountains, rivers, and plants. He felt that this should be useful for him to cultivate the delusion breaker divine eye. At that moment, he took Yi Tong out of the mountain and walked along a road, looking at everything along the way. "You're not cultivating anymore?" Wishing Crocodile was a little suspicious. Lin Tian chuckled. "What's that saying again? Haste makes waste. Take it slow. I will definitely cultivate it." "You're quite confident." Wishing Crocodile curled his lips. "Of course." Lin Tian smiled. He took little Yi Tong and walked along the road. His steps were gentle. He looked at the nearby mountains, looked at the surrounding vegetation, and even occasionally squatted down to watch the ants moving food in the haystack. His expression was very calm, and his eyes became more and more peaceful. "Master, eat the fruit." Little Yi Tong had become as lively as before. She jumped and picked a few wild fruits from the forest not far away. She handed one to Lin Tianyi and another to Wishing Crocodile. "Uncle Crocodile, eat it too." Lin Tian chuckled and took a bite of the fruit he got from little Yi Tong. He pulled up a piece of grass from the ground and held it in his mouth. Little Yi Tong followed suit. She also pulled up a piece of grass and held it in her mouth, exposing a large part of it. Then she pulled up another piece and handed it to Wishing Crocodile. "Uncle Crocodile, here!" Wishing Crocodile. It was a little speechless, but it still took it from the little guy's hand and held it in its mouth. For a moment, the two of them and the crocodile looked like gangsters crossing the street. Time passed quickly. In the blink of an eye, 3 days had passed. During these 3 days, Lin Tian did nothing. He just took little Yi Tong to look at the mountains and rivers. His eyes became more peaceful. Not long after that, they walked along another road. They met a group of ordinary cultivators coming toward them. This group of cultivators immediately trembled in fear. They stared at Lin Tian with fear in their hearts, and hurriedly made way for him. You really make people afraid wherever you go. TSK, you're a complete fiend. Wishing Crocodile looked at Lin Tian from the corner of its eyes. Little Yutong raised her head. Uncle Crocodile, Master is a good person, not a fiend. Wishing Crocodile rolled its eyes and didn't say anything. Lin Tian glanced at it. He didn't care about these cultivators who were afraid of him. He quietly walked past them and walked into the distance. Soon, he took Little Yutong and walked far away. Together with Wishing Crocodile, they gradually disappeared at the end of the road. At this time, the group of cultivators on the road finally let out sighs of relief. One by one, they exhaled. Some of them couldn't help but wipe the cold sweat on their foreheads. I didn't expect to meet such a ruthless person here. Really. I feel a chill down my spine when I see him. A young cultivator shrunk his neck. Lin Tian's fierce reputation was very popular recently. He had killed the holy sons of 3 sects, including the Dark Heart Sword sect. He had killed the strongest young experts of the 5 major sects, including the Coiling Dragon Holy Gate. He had killed dozens of great Dao experts, and a supreme elder of the Enlightenment realm from each of the 8 major forces. He had even single-handedly destroyed the True Moon Immortal sect. How could people not be afraid? It's strange. Recently, the Coiling Dragon Holy Gate, the 5 major sects, and the Dark Heart Sword sect have been unusually quiet. They didn't even send an expert to kill that ruthless person. I think the 8 major forces are deeply afraid of that ruthless person. They don't dare to make a move on him. I don't think it's possible. The Dark Heart Sword sect, Crimson Rainbow Immortal sect, and Ink Feather Origin Hall might be afraid of that ruthless person. However, the 5 major sects definitely won't. After all, these 5 major sects are much stronger than the 3 major sections. They have experts of the 4th sky of Enlightenment realm. Then, why are these major forces so quiet recently? I feel that these major forces won't let this matter go, especially the 5 major sections. They must be secretly planning something. It's impossible for them to let this matter go. After all, that ruthless person killed the strongest young experts of the 5 major sections. It's equivalent to killing the holy sons of the 5 major sects, killing the next generation of sect masters of the 5 major sections. Moreover, he also killed many experts of the Great Tao and a supreme elder of the 5 major sections. If they really let this matter go, where will these major forces put their face in the future? This group of cultivators discussed in low voices as they walked away. Lin Tian had already brought Little Yutong far away. He entered a large forest with the Wishing Crocodile. The air in the forest was very good. The spiritual energy was very good, and the grass and trees were very lush. He brought the little guy to the mountains, looking at the grass, trees, birds, and beasts. In the blink of an eye, 3 days had passed. On this day, he entered another mountain filled with demonic beasts. Just like a few days ago, he let the little guy fight. Little Yutong was very obedient. Although she would get hurt in the battle, she was not afraid at all. Soon, she was fighting with some demonic beasts of the spiritual sea realm in the forest. Golden vital essence spread on the surface of her body. Her little fists were very powerful. Lin Tian chuckled. His footsteps shook slightly. He sat down cross-legged on the branch of a large tree not far away. He was ready to cultivate the Delusion Breaker Divine Eye for the second time. Compared to the last time he cultivated the Delusion Breaker Divine Eye, he was much more cautious this time. In the process of entering this mountain, he had already set up 7 sealing formations and 7 immortal thunder-killing formations. He did not have to worry about being disturbed. I'll leave the little guy and me to you, he said to the Wishing Crocodile. The Wishing Crocodile curled his lips. Don't worry. Lin Tian smiled and nodded. Then, he closed his eyes. The blood chi in his body immediately mobilized and gathered in his eyes. At the same time, the great Tao precepts also surged together, intertwining with strands of divine light and slowly entering his eyes. Buzz. For a moment, the divine light outside his body boiled. His essence, chi, and spirit surged, jumping like wisps of flames. His expression was calm. As the blood chi and the great Tao precepts kept converging in his eyes, the dragon burial scripture also operated at the same time. The dragon patterns intertwined like chains, and like many true dragons poured in together with the great Tao precepts. For a moment, even though he closed his eyes, there was still a shocking divine light gushing out through the gaps between his upper and lower eyelids. Chapter 971. Divine light intertwined outside Lin Tian's body. Dragon patterns and Tao radiance flickered. He sat cross-legged on the old tree with a calm expression. More great path nomological laws and dragon patterns merged into his eyes. Not bad, the wishing crocodile muttered to itself. It seems like he will succeed soon. It stared at Lin Tian seriously. At the same time, it was also paying attention to little Yitong, who was fighting fiercely with many demon beasts not far away. 3 days passed in the blink of an eye. In these 3 days, Yitong stopped to rest 3 times. Lin Tian had been cultivating silently. The divine light outside his body became denser. Soon, another day passed. On this day, the divine light outside Lin Tian's body became chaotic again. His essence, energy, and great path nomological laws were trembling violently. Cough! His Tao body trembled slightly. Just like last time, he coughed up a mouthful of blood. More blood flowed from his eyes. In an instant, his aura became much weaker. The wishing crocodile was shocked. It hurriedly flashed over. Obviously, it had seen something. Failed again? Lin Tian nodded silently. He wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth and wiped the blood from his eyes. At this time, he felt that his eyes were more painful than last time. It was as if thousands of silver needles were piercing them. He waved his right hand slightly and took out the soul-absorbing pool water from the stone ring. He drank 3 mouthfuls and then used his cultivation technique to refine it. Another Tao injury? Why does it feel more serious than last time? The wishing crocodile stared at him. For cultivators, Tao injuries were very serious and difficult to heal. Now, in just 10 days, Lin Tian had suffered 2 Tao injuries in the process of cultivation. This was a very scary thing. It's okay. There is enough soul-absorbing pool water. Tao injuries are nothing to me. Lin Tian Andao. As he spoke, he sighed slightly. With the soul-absorbing pool water, he did not care about the terrifying Tao injuries. He could easily heal them with the soul-absorbing pool water. What made him sigh was that the cultivation of the delusion breaker divine eye was too difficult. Even with his current strength, it was still so difficult to cultivate. Yitong's divine fist! In the distance, a clear shout resounded. Little Yitong was covered in dirt. She clenched her little fist and smashed an early void flight great demon to the ground, causing this great demon to be unable to get up for a long time. He was gasping for breath. When Lin Tian and Wishing Crocodile heard this, they turned their heads and happened to see this scene. They couldn't help but find it a little funny. Master! Uncle Croc! When little Yitong saw Lin Tian and Wishing Crocodile looking at her, she stepped on the big demon's body and waved happily at them. Lin Tian looked at the little fellow from afar. He smiled faintly and stood up. Not cultivating any more? Wishing Crocodile asked. Let's wait for a few days first. Don't be too anxious, Lin Tian Andao said. I want to see more mountains and rivers. By the way, little Yitong has been fighting continuously for several days. She should take a rest. Blindly fighting is not a good thing for cultivation. Wishing Crocodile curled his lips and did not say anything. Immediately, the man and the crocodile appeared in front of little Yitong. When Lin Tian saw that the little fellow was not seriously injured, he let the little fellow use the sun's nirvana art to heal herself. Then, he took the little fellow and left this place. Just like a few days ago, he did not do anything special. He just took little Yitong on a simple walk. They walked past one mountain after another, crossed a large river, and looked at the ordinary things of the world. Then, every few days he would let the little fellow fight with demonic beasts to temper herself. And naturally, Every few days, he would start a new round of cultivation of the delusion breaker divine eye. In this way, 2 months passed very quickly. Including the first 2 times he cultivated the delusion breaker divine eye, and the last 2 months, he cultivated the delusion breaker divine eye a total of 12 times. However, without exception, he failed every time. Each time, he was seriously injured. Buzz! On this day, he sat cross-legged on a large rock in an old forest and began his 13th cultivation. Divine light covered his entire body. In the blink of an eye, a day passed. Cough! When the sun rose, Lin Tianandao trembled and coughed up blood again. More blood flowed out of his eyes. His hands trembled slightly, and he felt like his eyes were about to explode. Wishing Crocodile frowned. Kid, if you can't do it, then give up. This eye technique was created by the celestial venerable Zhang Long in his later years. In essence, it forcibly turns the ordinary eye into a divine eye that is comparable to the yin eye and the yang eye. It is truly going against the heavens. Lin Tian wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth, and used his divine power to evaporate the blood flowing out of his eyes. His expression was calm, and he was not shaken by the dozens of failures. In essence, through cultivation, we can transform from a mortal body to an immortal body. We can fly in the sky and burrow under the ground. We can go from an old age of 100 years to a lifespan of 100,000 years. Isn't that also going against the heavens? Since we are already going against the heavens, what's the point of this now? He said. Wishing Crocodile opened his mouth and was suddenly speechless. Lin Tianan smiled and took out the soul-absorbing pool water. He drank a dozen mouthfuls and refined it with the Sun Heart Sutra to heal his Tao injuries. For a moment, faint light intertwined on the surface of his body, and his Tao injuries were quickly healed. Wishing Crocodile stared at him, and his expression became serious. Kid, don't blame Lord Crocodile for not reminding you. You have already suffered 13 Tao injuries. If you continue a few more times, the soul-absorbing pool water will gradually lose its effect. Lin Tian nodded. I know what I'm doing. Although the soul-absorbing pool water could heal Tao injuries very well, if the same person repeatedly suffered Tao injuries and repeatedly used the soul-absorbing pool water to heal, the effect would naturally weaken gradually. It was equivalent to humans eating delicious food. The first time was excellent, the second time was not bad, and the third time was also wonderful. However, if one ate too much, they would gradually lose the feeling. It was like drinking plain water. He let out a breath of turbid air and stood up. Let's go for a walk, he said to Wishing Crocodile. Wishing Crocodile curled his lips and did not say anything. It just so happened that little Yitong fought with a group of demon beasts for a long time. He took the little girl away and walked to another place. This time, he walked for half a month and saw even more. Then, he brought little Yitong into another mountain to fight. He let the 5 elemental crocodiles stand guard for him, and he began to cultivate the delusion breaker divine eye on a large rock. Buzz! Faint divine light intertwined and circled around his body. The blood chi and great path precepts all over his body gathered towards his eyes. Then, he activated the dragon burial scripture. Dragon patterns appeared and surged towards his eyes. Suddenly, the light on his body became denser. His essence, chi, and spirit rose at an extremely fast speed, boiling slightly. Wishing Crocodile watched silently from the side. At the same time, it paid attention to little Yitong's battle. It also paid attention to every inch of space within a radius of 1,000 feet to prevent any sudden changes from happening. Lin Tian sat cross-legged on the big rock. Light intertwined around his body and all of it surged towards his eyes. Strands of divine light flowed out. He cultivated silently. His expression was calm and unhurried. The aura emitted from his body was sometimes gentle and sometimes violent. Just like that, he sat cross-legged on the big rock for half a month. On this day, his essence, chi, and spirit surged even more. The divine light that surged out through the gaps of his eyelids was much more intense. After another 10 breaths, the aura on his body suddenly stopped. His boiling essence, chi, and spirit immediately calmed down. The divine light that surged out of his eyes was also absorbed. He was still sitting on the big rock. Blood flowed from the corner of his mouth and the corner of his eyes. At this moment, he slowly opened his eyes. He failed again. Wishing Crocodile sighed. Then, it suddenly changed its expression. It sized up Lin Tian now. Oh, your essence, chi, and spirit are stable. It seems like you didn't suffer any Dao injuries this time. Lin Tiantan smiled. He stood up and wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth and eyes. Then, he said to Wishing Crocodile, Fight with me. I will suppress my cultivation to the early stage of the Great Path precepts. Just focus on attacking me. You can use any method you want. Wishing Crocodile immediately stared. What are you doing? Cultivating. Lin Tian said simply. Wishing Crocodile looked at Lin Tian suspiciously. However, it did not ask any more questions. It only nodded. At that moment, in this mountain, Lin Tian made little Yi Tong stop fighting with the many monsters and move her to an absolutely safe place. Then, he suppressed his cultivation to the early stage of the Great Path precepts. The power of his physique was also suppressed. It's coming! Wishing Crocodile shouted at Lin Tian now. It flapped its 5-colored wings and attacked directly. At Lin Tian's request, it did not show any mercy. It attacked with its cultivation of the 6th firmament of the Great Path precepts, using all its divine abilities and secret techniques. In an instant, a tyrannical demonic light shrouded the surroundings. There were even wisps of the 5 elements precepts that surged and pressed down on Lin Tian. Lin Tian's expression was calm. He did not use any divine abilities or secret techniques. Instead, he met the attack head-on. There were wisps of mysterious light mist lingering in his eyes. He only dodged the killing light of Wishing Crocodile and did not attack. He stared at the divine abilities and secret techniques that Wishing Crocodile attacked him and stared at them with his cultivation suppressed to the early stage of the Great Path precepts. The divine light in his eyes became even more intense. Bang! A demonic light landed on his body and sent him flying on the spot. Blood gushed out of his mouth. Master! In the distance, Liu Yitong was protected by Lin Tian's array patterns. When she saw Lin Tian coughing up blood and flying away, she could not help but cry out. Wishing Crocodile also frowned. It retracted its divine abilities and said, Kid, what the hell are you doing? Lin Tian stood up from afar and shook his head at Wishing Crocodile. Then he said, It's okay. Continue. Don't hold back. Use all kinds of methods to attack. This time, he had reached a critical point in the cultivation of the Delusion Breaker Divine Eye. He was just a little bit away from achieving initial success. Now, he needed some external help. Therefore, he let Wishing Crocodile attack him mercilessly. He wanted to use this opportunity to break through. Wishing Crocodile paused for a moment. Finally, it moved again. Its divine abilities and secret techniques were cast even more powerfully, and the 5 elements precepts were even more turbulent. In an instant there was a rumbling sound. The surrounding space collapsed inch by inch. All the demonic beasts in the mountain were so frightened that they fell to the ground. They trembled under the great Tao-level demonic might of Wishing Crocodile and trembled with fear. Boom! Boundless demonic light surrounded him and surged towards Lin Tian. The killing light was boundless. In the face of this, Lin Tian was very calm. He still did not use any techniques. Only a faint light surrounded his eyes. He stared straight at the dense demonic techniques that pressed down on him. He stared at them seriously, trying hard to see their essence. Bang! Once again, he was swept by more than a dozen killing lights. He was sent flying again. More than half of his body had been destroyed, and fresh blood was dripping. Continue, he said in a low voice. He activated the Nirvana of the Sun technique, and repaired his damaged body in the blink of an eye. The divine light in his eyes became even more intense. Wishing Crocodile frowned. An even stronger divine ability appeared and pressed down on Lin Tian mightily. Lin Tian stared at the demonic techniques that pressed down on him. He was still calm and simply dodging. His eyes were focused. Bang! 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 The demonic light swept across. He was sent flying again and again, coughing up blood time and time again. Continue! He repaired his body and said to Wishing Crocodile in a low voice. Wishing Crocodile cursed in a low voice. The 5 colored wings on its back flapped. The 5 elements precepts surged like a hurricane, supporting an even stronger demonic technique that pressed down on Lin Tian. Lin Tian's eyes were intertwined with divine light as he stepped forward. He dodged Wishing Crocodile's killing lights. His eyes were intertwined with divine light as he carefully observed and dodged. Bang! 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 Again and again, he was struck by the 5 elemental crocodile's secret arts. His corporeal body was shattered several times, but he still allowed the 5 elemental crocodile to continue while he himself didn't cast any spells. He only used his eyes to observe the 5 elemental crocodile's attacks and dodged them. Just like that, in the blink of an eye, 10 hours had passed. He had gradually adapted to the 5 elements crocodile's murderous aura from the beginning. His dodging movements became more and more natural and simple, and his eyes became brighter and brighter. Watch carefully! He stared at the sky full of demonic techniques from Wishing Crocodile, and whispered in his heart. With a rumble, he dodged the sky full of demonic techniques from Wishing Crocodile. His eyes became brighter and brighter. Then, gradually, he suddenly saw that there seemed to be hazy threads intertwined in the sky of the demon clan's secret arts, like sharp steel wires, as if they were supporting the demon clan's grand arts that the 5 elements crocodile cast. It seemed that this was the essence of the divine ability cast by the 5 elements crocodile. At the same time, he saw that the killing lights from the secret techniques that were surging towards him slowly slowed down. Even Wishing Crocodile's movements seemed to have slowed down countless times in an instant. Under careful observation, he could clearly see every detail of Wishing Crocodile's technique. Watch carefully! His eyes brightened several times in an instant. Facing the sky full of killing lights from Wishing Crocodile, he stretched out a finger and gently pressed it down. Suddenly, a soft sound was heard. The sky full of killing lights from the secret techniques that were pressing towards him were all shattered and dissipated into nothingness. This shocked Wishing Crocodile. It knew very well how powerful its divine ability was. It could definitely kill a powerhouse in the 9th heaven of the Great Tao. But now, Lin Tian had suppressed his cultivation to the early stage of the Great Tao, which was 6 small realms lower than it. However, he was able to shatter its powerful divine ability with a single finger. This shocked it. It looked at Lin Tian. Suddenly, its gaze fell on Lin Tian's eyes. Its expression changed. Boy, you! Chapter 972. Staring at Lin Tian's eyes, the Wishing Crocodile was really shocked. It even felt a little scared, as if it could not hide anything at this moment. That feeling was really terrible. In the distance, little Yutong looked at this place, and naturally saw Lin Tian's eyes at this moment. She could not help but widen her eyes. Master's eyes, why are there small circles? Whoosh! A light breeze blew in this space, swirling up bits of sand and dust. Lin Tian glanced around. At this moment, he felt that the world had become incomparably clear. The grass and trees were greener, the clouds were brighter, and even the flow of the air could be seen clearly. He looked at the Wishing Crocodile, the corners of his mouth raised, revealing a faint smile. The dragon patterns in his eyes were mysterious and hazy. The Wishing Crocodile shuddered again. Then, it suddenly understood something. This is the Delusion Breaker Divine Eye. You've mastered it? It stared at Lin Tian. Yes, it's the Delusion Breaker Divine Eye. Lin Tian smiled and nodded. He recovered his suppressed cultivation and physical strength. He felt that his essence, energy, and spirit had become stronger. At this moment, he felt as if he could see the essence of everything he saw. He paused, then said, However, this is only the initial stage of cultivation. It's still far from being proficient in controlling and mastering it. This is only the initial stage of cultivation. The whooshing crocodile's eyes widened even more. At this moment, it could clearly feel the terror of Lin Tian's eyes. There was a feeling that made its heart tremble. However, Lin Tian said that this was only the initial stage of cultivation. Yes, the initial stage of cultivation. Lin Tian nodded. On his eyes, strands of dragon patterns intertwined to form a circle, adding a mysterious charm to his eyes. He closed his eyes slightly, then opened them again. The dragon patterns on his eyes disappeared, and his eyes returned to normal. The patterns on your eyes are gone. Wishing Crocodile was slightly moved. You can change them back? Lin Tian nodded and said, When I don't use the delusion breaker eyes, my eyes will naturally return to normal. Master! Little Yitong shouted and ran over from a distance. She grabbed Lin Tian's trousers and stared into Lin Tian's eyes. Master, your eyes were so beautiful! The little guy's eyes were sparkling. Because he was still young and inexperienced in cultivation, he couldn't understand how terrifying Lin Tian's delusion breaker eyes were. Lin Tian chuckled and rubbed the little guy's head. Let's go. Let's leave this place, he said to Wishing Crocodile. Because he had used the Wishing Crocodile's attack to cultivate the delusion breaker divine eye, everything within a radius of several hundred meters had been destroyed beyond recognition. The vegetation had been destroyed, and the ground had collapsed. There was nothing he could do even if he stayed behind. As you wish, Wishing Crocodile said. Lin Tian nodded and let little Yitong follow him out of the mountain. Soon, they walked out of the mountain and went further away. Let's really rest for a few days, Lin Tian said. He had cultivated the delusion breaker divine eye, and little Yitong had been fighting hard for the past few months. Now that he had reached the third level of the Sea of Consciousness, he felt that he could really relax. Previously, he had gone to see the mountains and rivers every few days, but that wasn't really a rest. It was all to accumulate experience for cultivating the delusion breaker divine eye. Now, he took little Yitong on foot and went on a real sightseeing tour. In the blink of an eye, another 3 days had passed. On this day, 2 people and a crocodile walked to a grassland. The breeze blew the grass, making a whistling sound. Little Yitong pulled up a blade of grass from the ground and held it in her mouth like Lin Tian did last time. Then, she pulled up 2 more and handed them to Lin Tian and Wishing Crocodile. Master, Uncle Crocodile, here. The little girl was 5 years old. She was very cute with a blade of grass in her mouth. Lin Tian chuckled. He took the blade of grass from the little girl and put it in his mouth. For a moment, he looked very relaxed. Wishing Crocodile curled his lips and also took the blade of grass from the little girl. After a pause, he simply bit it and swallowed it. Lin Tian chewed on the blade of grass. His steps were very gentle. The black hair in front of his forehead fluttered in the breeze. He looked a little elegant. I've already rested for 3 days. I have to continue cultivating and reach the half-step enlightenment realm. Then I'll rush to the enlightenment realm in one go, he muttered to himself in his heart. Not long ago, he obtained a reality-developing elixir. As long as he entered the half-step enlightenment realm, he could rely on this elixir to directly enter the enlightenment realm without any side effects. At that time, his strength would undergo another great transformation. Whoosh! Suddenly, a cold light appeared in the distant sky. It was extremely cold. A black arrow rushed out from a mountain a few hundred feet away. It was like a comet with a tail. Its speed was extremely fast, and it directly pierced between Lin Tian's eyebrows. The killing intent was bone-piercing. The divine power was terrifying. Lin Tian's expression changed. This arrow came too fast and was extremely terrifying. Even now, he could kill an elite of the second heaven of enlightenment realm. At this moment, a sense of death rose in his heart. It was as if the god of death was closing in. He did not have time to completely dodge. He used his left hand to backhand palm and gently pushed away Wishing Crocodile and little Yitong beside him. His body leaned to one side to avoid the vital point between his eyebrows. At the same time, he stretched out his right hand and clawed at the incoming arrow. Pooh! The black arrow pierced through his right hand. Immediately after, it pierced through his chest, leaving behind a glaring trail of blood. Master! Little Yutong was very anxious. She couldn't help but cry out in fear. Tears almost fell. This was the first time she saw her master get injured. His chest was pierced through, and fresh blood was dripping. Whoosh! The peerless killing light appeared once more. In the distant mountains, another black arrow shot over. It was like a prideful true dragon, and its speed became even faster. It was still aimed straight at the space between Lin Tian's brows, shattering inch by inch along the way. This powerful arrow was even more terrifying than the first arrow. It was swift and fierce. If it really hit between the eyebrows, it would definitely be a one-hit kill. It would immediately shatter one's divine sense and divine soul. There was absolutely no possibility of survival. Lin Tian's body suddenly felt cold. He clearly felt the terror of this arrow. It was like the arrow of death, as if it could destroy everything. However, even though he felt the terror of this arrow, he wasn't afraid. The golden divine light around his body surged as he stepped on the yin and yang to move. He moved more than 30 meters away by a hair's breadth and avoided this arrow with difficulty. However, in the next moment, his expression changed again. The black arrow that he avoided actually changed its direction. As if it had its own consciousness, it closed in on him again. In the blink of an eye, it was right in front of him. Pooh! Glaring blood splashed out. The terrifying arrow directly pierced through his chest and dragged his body into the distance. Master! Little Yutong was even more anxious. Seeing Lin Tian get injured again, her eyes became wet. Lin Tian was sent flying. Blood splashed out from his chest. He only felt that his internal organs were shattered. A heart-wrenching pain spread throughout his body. His flying body could not be stabilized for a moment. Whoosh! 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 The ear-piercing sound of the arrow resounded through the sky. This time, a total of 3 black arrows rushed out from the distant mountain. They were faster and more powerful. In the blink of an eye, they appeared beside Lin Tian, who had not yet stabilized his body. They respectively aimed at Lin Tian's head, the space between his eyebrows, and the origin of his abdomen. They were extremely ruthless. Any one of them would be enough to kill him instantly. It could be seen that the person who attacked from the distant mountain was very terrifying. His cultivation was definitely in the realm of enlightenment. Moreover, he was very good at the way of killing. He grasped the timing of his attack very well. When Lin Tian had not stabilized his body, the arrows were shot out. The 3 black sword lights arrived in the blink of an eye. They were all aimed at the vital parts of the human body. It was a sure kill situation. Moreover, it was very obvious that this person was clearly waiting here for the sake of killing Lin Tian. The whooshing crocodile growled. Seeing that Lin Tian was in a sure kill situation, the 5 colored wings on his back shook. The 5 elements Tao rushed out wildly and rushed towards Lin Tian. Whoosh! The cold light was terrifying. In the distant mountain, another black arrow approached and shot towards the whooshing crocodile. Moreover, after this black arrow, another black arrow rushed out and mercilessly pierced towards little Yutong. The whooshing crocodile's expression changed. It was immediately furious. At this moment, it gritted its teeth and turned around. It pounced towards the killing arrow that was piercing towards little Yutong. It did not even have time to pay attention to the killing arrow that was piercing towards itself. At this moment, it displayed the 5 elements Tao. Its demonic power was vast and mighty, but its expression was very ugly. Its face was full of anxiety. It could not catch up with the speed of the killing arrow that was shooting towards little Yutong. Damn it! It roared angrily and madly increased its speed. And almost at the same time, in another direction, Lin Tian's chest was overflowing with blood. He had already been forced to the front by the 3 killing arrows. It was already impossible to dodge. Ordinary people, even if it was a powerhouse of the 3rd sky of enlightenment, would definitely suffer. However, there was no fear in his eyes. His gaze was deep and cold. His eyes changed in an instant. A dragon-patterned ring appeared on each of his pupils. He directly opened the delusion breaker divine eye. In just a moment, the heaven and earth became incomparably bright. The attack trajectory of the 3 black killing arrows that had already rushed in front of him became extremely clear. He opened the delusion breaker divine eye and could clearly see it. Swoosh! His figure flashed. With the sound of breaking through the air, he directly broke away from the encirclement of the 3 black killing arrows. He appeared beside Yi Tong and the wishing crocodile by a hair's breadth. Both of his hands reached out, one left and one right, to grab the black arrow radiance that was shooting towards the person and the crocodile. The golden divine light surged and shattered the 2 arrow radiance. The wishing crocodile was suddenly startled. Boy, you! The 3 black killing arrows just now were extremely terrifying. They seized the perfect opportunity to kill Lin Tian. They had already closed in on Lin Tian. In that kind of situation, even a powerhouse of the 3rd sky of enlightenment would not be able to avoid it. It was very likely that he would suffer. It did not expect that Lin Tian actually broke away from that kind of situation and rushed over with extreme speed. He also shattered the 2 black killing arrows that were shooting towards it and little Yi Tong. Almost at the same time, a soft sound of surprise faintly came from the distant mountain. It also seemed to be a little surprised. However, in the next moment, the peerless killing intent appeared again. Swish! 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 The sound of air breaking reverberated. This time, a total of 5 black arrow lights rushed over. Each of them was extremely terrifying. Moreover, their auras seemed to blend together, confining the space in all directions and covering every vital part of Lin Tian's body. Boy Lin, be careful! If Lord Crocodile's guess is correct, the person who secretly made the move should be from the great extinguishing god dynasty. This bloodline enters the Tao through killing. It's very terrifying, Wishing Crocodile said in a low voice. Lin Tian's eyes were cold. On his pupils, the dragon patterns intertwined into a ring shape as if they were engraved. It also looked like an innate Tao pattern. Although the 5 black arrow lights rushing over were very terrifying, he could see their attack trajectory clearly. He could also see the thinnest weakness of each arrow light. He immediately shook his right hand and slashed out 5 towering heaven sword auras. Clang! The 5 towering heaven sword auras were powerful. Together with his divine eyes of illusion breaker, they slashed at the thinnest weakness of each of the 5 arrow lights. At the same time, he turned his back to Wishing Crocodile and asked, "What is the great extinguishing god dynasty?" Chapter 973. Listening to Wishing Crocodile's words, Lin Tian frowned immediately. Great extinguishing divine dynasty? An assassin organization? The 9th heaven? He said. In the 9th heaven, only the desolate shrine seems to have a grudge against me. The desolate shrine wouldn't invite others to kill me, right? Who said it's the desolate shrine? Wishing Crocodile said. Think about it yourself, who wants you dead the most recently? Lin Tianwei paused for a moment. The 5 great immortal sects, including the coiling dragon Holy Gate, and the 3 great sections. After saying that, he shook his head again. It shouldn't be. Among the 8 great sects, the 5 great immortal sects are the most powerful, but according to the rumors, the strongest person in their sect is only at the 4th heavenly layer of enlightenment realm. They can't reach the 9th heaven, so they can't invite the great extinguishing divine dynasty. Who told you that you have to go to the 9th heaven to invite the great extinguishing divine dynasty to kill someone? Wishing Crocodile said. This assassin organization is terrifying and mysterious. No one knows where they were founded, but some powerhouses and great forces have special ways to contact them. Even in the 1st heaven, they can contact the great extinguishing divine dynasty through a special method. Of course, the price of entrusting them to kill someone is very high. Ordinary people and forces can't afford it. Boom! It was also at this time that the 5 black arrows shot from the mountain collided with the 5 heaven-piercing sword astral slashes released by Lin Tian. Divine light burst out, and a destructive light mist spread in all directions. Then, in the destructive light mist, 5 black arrows shot out one after another. The killing power was still terrifying. Lin Tian frowned. The heaven-piercing sword astral slashes, coupled with the divine eye of Illusion Breaker, hit the weakest point of the 5 black arrows, but he didn't expect that the 5 arrows couldn't be destroyed. They should be arrows shot by divine weapons, Wishing Crocodile quickly said. Rumor has it that there is an immortal slaying bow among the divine weapons. It is a high-grade divine weapon and does not need arrows. Instead, it uses divine power to make arrows. The arrows it shoots are extraordinarily powerful and can pierce through anything. Moreover, the most shocking thing is that the arrow radiance shot out by this divine bow will not stop until it hits the target. Unless a powerful force directly destroys the arrow radiance shot out, or the wielder of the divine bow stops the killing arrow with his own thoughts, the arrow will continue to attack on its own until it touches the target's blood. It is extremely terrifying. It stared into the distance and said, "It should be the arrow shot out by that divine bow." Lin Tian's eyes flashed with a glimmer of light. There was no need for arrows. The arrows were made from divine power, and they would not stop until they were stained with the target's blood. It did sound like a very powerful divine weapon. Its divine might was astonishing, and its uses were unparalleled. Furthermore, he finally understood why the black arrow had changed direction on its own and pierced through him even though he had clearly dodged it earlier. So that was what had happened. He stared at the 5 black arrows that were rushing towards him. His right hand shook as he observed with his delusion breaker divine eye. Then, he directly propped up the 4-symbol seal. 2 layers of silver dowed diagrams of the 4 symbols pressed forward, enveloping the 5 black arrows and directly crushing them. "Protect the little guy," he said to Wishing Crocodile. As he spoke, he stared at the mountain in the distance. The yin and yang ho flashed and followed the direction of the black arrow radiance. He crossed 100 feet in one step and appeared in the mountain in the blink of an eye. From afar, he saw a middle-aged man holding a black longbow in his hand. The bowstring was sparkling and translucent like silk. The body of the bow was engraved with all kinds of strange patterns that shone with faint light. His expression was cold. Without any superfluous movements, he took a step forward and directly swung his iron fist down. Dong! The golden iron fist pressed down on the sky. The void cracked and instantly shattered. The middle-aged man was covered in a black robe. Only his face could be seen. His eyes were as cold as ice and intertwined with a gloomy aura. Shio! 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 In front of him, the ground suddenly shattered. No less than a dozen black arrows rushed out. Their speed was unpredictable, and their killing power was astonishing. They completely enveloped Lin Tian. Lin Tian was moved. This black-robed man had actually set up a dozen killing arrows around the ambush arrows. At this time, they were all locked onto him. Clang! An ear-piercing sound rang out. The black-robed man also moved at this time. He held the bow in his left hand, and a short sword appeared in his right hand. He stabbed towards the space between Lin Tian's eyebrows. The short sword was exceptionally sharp. It stabbed upwards at an extremely tricky angle, like a bloodthirsty viper. It could be said that this was an excellent killing trap. Using the black killing arrows that were set up beside him at the beginning to attack Lin Tian, disturbing Lin Tian's perception and covering every vital part of Lin Tian's body. Then, with the short sword behind, he stabbed towards the space between Lin Tian's eyebrows. It could be called a fatal trap. Even if a strong man of the third sky of Enlightenment realm came, he would die without a doubt. Lin Tian frowned. This black-robed man was really terrifying. His cultivation was at the second sky of Enlightenment realm. His attacking methods were incomparably experienced. They were fierce and ruthless. One after another, it was difficult to dodge. He was secretly shocked. However, although he was a little surprised, it was only for a moment. The next moment, the light in his opened eyes of the god of destruction became stronger. His pupils shook and captured all the trajectories of the dozens of killing arrows. He directly propped up the four symbols seal and completely crushed them. It was also at this time that a bone-piercing chill approached. The black-robed man held the short sword and attacked in front of Lin Tian, piercing straight towards him. This kind of attack used both speed and power to perfection. Even a strong man of the third sky of enlightenment realm would find it difficult to escape. Clang! The short sword was extremely fast, like a poisonous dragon swimming past. The tip of the sword directly approached the space between Lin Tian's eyebrows. The distance was less than half an inch. The extremely cold aura enveloped Lin Tian in the blink of an eye. The murderous intent was terrifying. Lin Tian's heart trembled, but his expression did not change. He was very calm under the sure-kill sword. The god of destruction saw through everything. His right hand bent and flicked lightly. A golden sword light struck horizontally, shaking off this sure-kill sword. The black-robed man was like a dark pool, and he was like the god of death that moved through the world. Under the circumstances that the bow and sword were unable to kill Lin Tian, he immediately stopped attacking and retreated decisively like a wisp of smoke, and his speed was shockingly swift. "Want to leave?" Lin Tianling said. He moved with the yin and yang robe. His speed was even faster. In the blink of an eye, he caught up with the black-robed man and slammed his palm down. However, it was also at this moment that the black-robed man disappeared silently. His figure was no longer there, and his aura was no longer there. It was as if he had turned into air, as if he had never appeared. Whooshing Crocodile carried little Yitong and ascended to the sky at this time. Seeing this scene, he hurriedly transmitted his voice. The great extinguishing god dynasty pays attention to killing with one blow. They mainly use sneak attacks. They cultivate a very advanced divine concealment technique, which can assist in assassination. They can also quickly escape after the assassination fails. They completely hide their figure and aura. He used that divine concealment technique. Lin Tian heard Whooshing Crocodile's transmission. In fact, he did not care about the disappearance of the black-robed man's figure and aura. The god of destruction shook slightly, and wisps of light mist flowed. It directly saw through everything. In an instant, he captured the black-robed man's figure and stepped to his side. Clang! The stone-veined sword appeared in his hand. The power of a high-grade divine weapon intertwined, and he directly slashed at the black-robed man. The black-robed man's eyes narrowed. He clearly did not expect that Lin Tian could actually see him clearly after he used the divine concealment technique. He had no choice but to turn around and counterattack. He used the short sword in his hand to meet Lin Tian's stone sword. Crack! Lin Tian's stone sword pressed down and directly broke the black-robed man's short sword. Moreover, a strong force vibrated through the broken short sword and landed on the black-robed man's body. With a bang, the black-robed man was knocked out of his position and flew horizontally. He coughed out a mouthful of blood, and his eyes narrowed even more. He stared at Lin Tian and used the divine concealment technique again. He disappeared like a ghost and escaped into the distance like a wisp of smoke. "You can't escape!" Lin Tian's voice was cold. He opened his divine eyes of delusion breaker and saw through the black-robed man's essence. The divine concealment technique used by the black-robed man could not be hidden from him. He used the yin-yang puppet and instantly stepped forward. The stone sword in his hand shook, and he directly used all his strength to use the three styles of Lin Tian. With a clang, the sound of the sword shattered the sky. The three styles of Lin Tian transformed into a sword ray that flashed and jumped. In the blink of an eye, it was right in front of the black-robed man, sealing off all of his chi and escape routes. The black-robed man shook his divine bow. Using the divine bow as a weapon, he slashed out a cold chi to meet Lin Tian's three styles of Lin Tian. Poof! Blood splattered. The black-robed man flew horizontally. His body was full of cracks. If it were not for the fact that he had a high-grade divine weapon divine bow, his body would have been directly shattered by the three styles of Ling Tian. Lin Tian's eyes were cold. He took a step forward and the stone sword in his hand shook again, slashing down horizontally. He had to bear with it. This black-robed man from the great extinguishing god dynasty was very scary. He was very good at the Tao of killing. It was as if killing was the Tao. If it were not for the fact that he had cultivated the divine eyes of Delusion Breaker, the three black arrows from before would have taken his life. Moreover, the dozens of black arrows that the black-robed man set up around him combined with the short sword could also make him suffer. Moreover, at this time, if he did not have the divine eyes of Delusion Breaker, he would not be able to see through his opponent's divine concealment technique. He would not be able to do anything to his opponent. At this time, his sword was merciless. The sword ray swallowed and spat, slashing straight at the black-robed man's head. The powerful sword of Ling Tian completely sealed all the space around the black-robed man, not giving him any chance to dodge. Clang! At this time, an ear-piercing sword sound came from outside the mountain. A blood-red sword ray appeared out of thin air, and its power was terrifying. A powerful sword. A frightening sword. It was as if it had slashed down from the eternal unknown. It was not aimed at Lin Tian, nor was it aimed at Wishing Crocodile. Instead, it directly enveloped little Yitong, who was on Wishing Crocodile's back, and went straight for the space between little Yitong's eyebrows. Obviously, there was more than one assassin from the great extinguishing god dynasty in this place. There were other experts hiding in the dark. They could tell that Lin Tian was very powerful and extraordinary. They also knew that Yitong was Lin Tian's disciple. At this time, they directly aimed their killing sword at little Yitong. They wanted to forcibly distract Lin Tian and create an opportunity for the black-robed man to retreat. "You're courting death!" A cold light flashed in Lin Tian's eyes. His divine eyes of Delusion Breaker saw through everything. He ignored the black-robed man and threw the stone sword in his hand out of the mountain. He flew up at an even faster speed and blocked the killing sword that was going for little Yitong. Almost at the same time, a cold voice came from the void in the distance. "Go!" Obviously, the word, "go," was said to the black-robed man. "Don't even think about leaving," Lin Tian said coldly. He stared in the direction of the voice. His divine eyes of Delusion Breaker saw through everything. He saw a grey-robed man who was using the divine concealment technique to hide in the void. He took a step forward and immediately activated the reincarnation scroll. At this moment, he was truly enraged. If he hadn't cultivated the Delusion Breaker divine eye, he would have been killed long ago. Moreover, the black-robed man and the grey-robed man both attacked little Yitong with peerless killing lights. Their attacks were ruthless and merciless, and it was unbearable for him. This was his first disciple. She was lively, sensible, well-behaved, and cute. A few months ago, she had suffered endless hardships. Her parents passed away, and her eyes were gouged out. Now that she had recovered with great difficulty, there was someone who was continuously targeting her with the killing light in front of him. Die! He opened his divine eyes of Delusion Breaker and increased his speed. Like a golden lightning bolt, he appeared in front of the grey-robed man in one step. He blocked all his escape routes with the divine eyes of Delusion Breaker. The reincarnation scroll pressed down mercilessly. The grey-robed man was shocked. He didn't expect Lin Tian's speed to suddenly increase. In an instant, he was in front of him, who was at the second level of enlightenment realm. Moreover, whether it was Lin Tian's reincarnation scroll or Lin Tian's eyes, they both made his heart palpitate. You boom! The reincarnation scroll pressed down and directly enveloped the grey-robed man. With a poof, he was crushed into pieces. His entire body and soul were destroyed. Whoosh! Chapter 974. The black-robed man was extremely fast. After using the divine concealment technique, he was thousands of feet away in the blink of an eye. Lin Tian tilted his head and stepped on the yin and yang hua. He instantly leaped over like a human-shaped bolt of lightning. In the blink of an eye, 3 breaths passed, and he caught up with the other party. He reached out his right hand and grabbed the other party. The black-robed man used the divine concealment technique again, and his body merged into the void, disappearing like a ghost. Even his aura was gone, and one's divine will couldn't detect him. It could be said to be a wonderful technique. "Get out!" Lin Tianling said. Divine light lingered in his eyes and dragon patterns intertwined to form a ring. With a shake of his right hand, he slapped the void and forced the black-robed man out like a scarecrow. The black-robed man coughed up blood and his pupils constricted again before he fled again. However, Lin Tian wouldn't give him a chance. The yin and yang hua flashed, and in the blink of an eye, he appeared in front of him and punched him. Boom! At this moment, he threw out the Chaos Emperor's fist and crushed a large area of space on the spot. The black-robed man had no choice but to use a great technique to resist, transforming into a large snake that intertwined with dark and poisonous light. Pisht! With a soft sound, the large snake was shattered by Lin Tian's Chaos Emperor's fist. Afterwards, the power of the Chaos Emperor's fist did not stop and landed steadily on the black-robed man's body, shattering him on the spot. Blood stained the sky, and the divine bow in his hand rolled thousands of feet away, smashing dozens of huge cracks on the ground. It was enough to tell that the divine bow weighed at least a few thousand kilograms. The black-robed man let out a low roar and his physical body reassembled. In the blink of an eye, he recovered and quickly used many mystical abilities. It was also at this time that Lin Tian directly lifted up the reincarnation scroll, and it mightily descended, directly enveloping the black-robed man, sealing off every corner of his surroundings. However, he did not use the reincarnation diagram to crush the other party for the time being. Instead, he shattered the powerful secret techniques that the other party had used, and used the king's territory mystical abilities to suppress the other party on the ground. "Who asked you to kill me?" He stared coldly at the black-robed man. From Wishing Crocodile's reminder, Huang Xiaolong had guessed that the Dark Heart Sword Sect, Coiling Dragon Holy Gate, and the other 4 superpowers had sent the all-extinguishing God Dynasty to kill him. However, that was just a guess. Whether it was true or not, Huang Xiaolong wanted to confirm it. The black-robed man was suppressed under the reincarnation diagram. He tried a few times but was unable to move. His eyes immediately flashed with a ruthless and decisive light. Then, in the next moment, his body swelled and a violent wave spread out. In the distance, Wishing Crocodile's expression changed. He quickly said, "Kid, retreat quickly!" He was about to self-destruct. With the myriad extinguishing God Dynasty's unique technique as a catalyst, he was already infinitely close to the point of destruction. No divine ability could stop him at this moment. Retreat! However, it was also at this time that the black-robed man was able to move with the help of the self-destruction. He directly reached out and grabbed Lin Tian's left arm. His strength was astonishing, and he locked Lin Tian to his side. "Mission complete! Let's die together!" he hissed. In the distance, Wishing Crocodile saw this scene and his expression changed. He immediately flapped his 5-colored wings and quickly went to help Lin Tian. The black-robed man grabbed Lin Tian's left arm tightly. The aura of destruction became stronger and stronger, and a majestic hurricane swept out. It shook Wishing Crocodile away. "Damn it!" Wishing Crocodile cursed. The black-robed man was at the 2nd heaven of enlightenment. The power of self-destruction from a person at this level was not something that Wishing Crocodile, who was at the 6th heaven of the Great Path, could withstand. Crack! 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 The void collapsed inch by inch. Even though the black-robed man had not really self-destructed, the space here could not withstand such pressure. Lin Tian was grabbed by the black-robed man. He could naturally feel this terrifying power. If he really exploded, he would definitely die. There was no way to survive. However, his expression did not change at all. The divine eyes of Delusion Breaker intertwined with divine brilliance. He could clearly see the chaotic divine power flowing in the black-robed man's body at this moment. He directly pointed a finger at his chest and forcibly cut off the flow of divine power in his body. Suddenly, the black-robed man trembled. His body was like a shriveled balloon. The destructive aura disappeared without a trace in an instant, and he calmed down directly. In the distance, Wishing Crocodile immediately stared. This, the self-destruction of a cultivator at the second heaven of enlightenment, was infinitely close to the critical point of self-destruction. Normally, it was absolutely impossible to stop it. However, Lin Tian forcibly interrupted the black-robed man's self-destruction with just a finger. The black-robed man showed a shocked expression for the first time. He looked at Lin Tian in shock. You! His self-destruction was about to be completed. It should be absolutely impossible to stop it. But now, Lin Tian interrupted him with just a finger. Lin Tian looked down at the black-robed man. It seems that it's impossible for you to say who commissioned you. Let me see for myself. He stared at the black-robed man. A powerful divine consciousness surged out and entered the man's sea of consciousness. You're digging your own grave! The black-robed man's voice was emotionless. Almost in an instant, Lin Tian's divine consciousness entered the man's sea of consciousness and directly touched a divine rune. It was the Broken God rune. This kind of God rune was used to protect important information from leaking out. Once someone touched it, or if the person who planted the Broken God rune wanted to leak the information, the Broken God rune would explode by itself. At this time, the Broken God rune in the black-robed man's sea of consciousness was very bright. It was obviously planted by a real master of the great extinguishing God dynasty. Once it exploded, its power would definitely surpass the ordinary Broken God rune. Let's die together! The black-robed man said coldly. In the next moment, the Broken God rune shone brightly. His sea of consciousness, soul, and body exploded at the same time as if he was self-destructing. In an instant, terrifying fluctuations swept out in all directions. It was like a destructive torrent, shattering large pieces of space. Lin Tian's expression remained calm amidst this torrent of destruction. This was because he had already guessed that there might be something like the divine fragment rune in his opponent's sea of consciousness before he searched for his opponent's sea of consciousness. The great Tao reincarnation diagram that he had secretly prepared was directly drawn in front of him. Moreover, his body retreated like lightning. At the same time, while he was retreating, he opened the divine eye of delusion, which interweaved with a thicker light fog. He caught a glimpse of several figures in the black-robed man's sea of consciousness. They contained the unique auras of the three great sects, the Coiling Dragon Holy Gate, and the other four great sections. Although they were vague, he couldn't be wrong. It's really them, he said coldly. At this time, the surrounding area was completely destroyed. A deep pit with a diameter of several hundred feet was on the ground. It was bottomless, and it was terrifying. Wishing Crocodile flew over from afar. It stared at Lin Tian and said, "Brat, you're really heaven-defying. Even that didn't kill you?" Lin Tian immediately wanted to slap it. What did it mean by even that didn't kill you? Do you know how to speak properly? Just as he was thinking about this, his Dao body suddenly shook violently. Cough! He coughed out a mouthful of essence blood, and blood flowed out of his eyes. Little Yitong panicked. Master! Wishing Crocodile was also shocked. Are you still injured? Both the man and the crocodile stared at him. No. Lin Tian shook his head. The dragon pattern rings in his eyes were very magical. These eyes are too much of a burden on the body. This is the first time I've used them for such a long time. I overdid it. As he spoke, he closed his eyes slightly. When he opened them again, the dragon pattern rings in his eyes had disappeared. Then, he wiped away the blood that he coughed out and the blood that flowed out of his eyes. Hearing this, Little Yitong and Wishing Crocodile both heaved a sigh of relief. Wishing Crocodile stared at Lin Tian's eyes and sighed. Speaking of which, the divine eyes that you've cultivated are really terrifying. If it weren't for these divine eyes today, you would have died several times. Previously, you successfully avoided the 3 fatal black arrows, saw through the great extinguishing god dynasty's divine concealment technique, and interrupted the black-robed man's self-destruction. These were all because of these divine eyes, right? Yes, that's indeed the case. Lin Tian nodded. If he hadn't cultivated the delusion-breaker divine eye, he would have died several times today. From this point, it could be seen that the assassin sent by the great extinguishing divine dynasty was extremely terrifying. He was too proficient in the way of killing. Under normal circumstances, he could even kill a person of the 4th sky of enlightenment realm with a sudden attack. As he spoke, he didn't stand still. Instead, he waved his right hand and grabbed the black divine bow that the black-robed man had dropped in the distance. He wiped off the black-robed man's spiritual imprint on it. Wishing Crocodile stared at the divine bow, and its eyes lit up. It really is the immortal slaying bow. This is a great treasure. It had been cultivating for many years and knew a lot of things. At this time, it could naturally recognize the immortal slaying bow at a glance. Lin Tian held this divine bow and observed it carefully. He discovered that the material of this divine bow was extraordinary. It was forged from the black meteorite divine metal, and the bowstring was also very unusual. It seemed to be forged from the spine of some extremely powerful strange beast. Furthermore, when he scanned it with his divine perception, he discovered that this divine bow was engraved with very powerful Dao patterns, both inside and outside. It was extraordinary. Good bow, he praised. Holding the black divine bow, his eyes couldn't help but light up. Now, he had the Chaos Emperor fist and the stone veined sword in close combat. For long-range attacks, he had the immortal slaying bow. His combat strength had increased a little. He waved his right hand and put it away. At the same time, he also put away the upper-grade divine weapon, the stone-veined sword. Wishing Crocodile spoke again at this time, and said, "How is it? How is it?" Although the black-robed man's spiritual sea and soul were destroyed by the broken divine runes, it felt that Lin Tian seemed to have found something with his divine eyes of illusion breaker. Lin Tian nodded. "You're right. It was indeed the Dark Heart Sword Sect and the Coiling Dragon Holy Gate." Wishing Crocodile smiled proudly. "Listen to Lord Crocodile, you can't go wrong." After saying that, it was speechless. It looked at Lin Tiandao and said, "Speaking of which, you're really in big trouble this time. Once the great extinguishing god dynasty accepts a mission, they will definitely carry it out to the end. They won't give up until the target is killed. This time, they failed to assassinate you. I believe that not long after, there will be more powerful assassins coming. Sometimes, when you're walking on the road, an ordinary wandering cultivator walking in front of you may be a powerful assassin from the great extinguishing god dynasty. It's impossible to guard against a sudden attack. What are you afraid of? Block soldiers with arms, water with an earthweir." Lin Tian was very calm. Wishing Crocodile curled its lips. "You're very calm. You're overestimating them," Lin Tian said. "Overestimating my ass." Wishing Crocodile looked at him. "Let me make it clear to you. This inheritance is crazy. As long as the client pays enough, they even dare to assassinate an emperor. Moreover, they have successfully killed an emperor before." Hearing this, Lin Tian's expression changed slightly. They even dare to assassinate an emperor? And successfully kill one? What do you think? Otherwise, why would Lord Crocodile say that they are much more terrifying than the desolate shrine? Wishing Crocodile curled its lips. Lin Tian. He suddenly felt very unhappy. "Let's go and vent," he said. "Vent?" Wishing Crocodile was a little suspicious and asked, "What do you want to do? You set up such a troublesome enemy for me for no reason. What do you think I should do?" Lin Tian gritted his teeth. "Destroy them." Hearing this, Wishing Crocodile immediately laughed. "This is good, Lord Crocodile likes it." It stretched out its claws and pointed to the northeast of this place, saying, "Go this way, the Dark Heart Sword Sect is in this direction. Start with the Dark Heart Sword Sect. With your current strength, destroying a sect like the Dark Heart Sword Sect is a piece of cake." After destroying the Dark Heart Sword sect, then go to the Blood Rainbow Immortal sect and the Ink Feather Yuan Hall. As for the 5 major immortal sects like the Coiling Dragon Holy Sect, I guess you can't destroy them now. After all, there are powerhouses at the 4th sky of enlightenment in those few immortal sections. You can't deal with people of that level now. Humph. Lin Tianling laughed. Wait until I comprehend the eternal killing array and carve it with 180 killing array platforms. If I throw a dozen of them, can I destroy them? Whooshing Crocodile stared, then its eyes lit up, and then it laughed. Kid, you're ruthless. It laughed loudly. It knew that the eternal killing array controlled by Lin Tian was very terrifying. Just a corner of it could kill 10 directions. At that moment, Wishing Crocodile led the way, and Lin Tian took Little Yitong. The 2 people and the crocodile went straight to the Dark Heart Sword sect in the northeast. Soon, they were more than 10,000 feet away. Uncle, are we going to destroy a sect? Suddenly, a laugh sounded. Chapter 975. Not only was Lin Tian moved by the sudden appearance of the white-clothed girl, but even Wishing Crocodile was slightly taken aback. What a beautiful girl! It couldn't help but exclaim. It was an old monster that had lived for more than 1,000 years. For it to suddenly say such a thing, it was clear that the white-clothed girl's beauty was earth-shattering. Little Yitong blinked, looked at the girl, and said in a crisp voice, "Big sister, you're so beautiful." The white-clothed girl looked at Little Yitong and giggled. You are? Lin Tian looked at the girl and asked. This place was actually quite remote. For such a beautiful girl to appear here and ask, "Uncle, are you going to exterminate a sect?" made him feel very strange. As he thought of this, he suddenly felt that something was wrong. After a pause, he figured out what was wrong. Uncle! Uncle again! He was very speechless. In the past, Little Yitong had called him uncle. After all, she was 20 years younger than him. But this girl who suddenly appeared looked to be around 18. How could she call him uncle? He clearly looked very young, only in his 20s. Uncle, what's wrong? The white-clothed girl smiled sweetly. She was very familiar with Lin Tian. She moved to Lin Tian's side and stared at him. Lin Tian. On the other side, Wishing Crocodile began to laugh maniacally. Brat Lin, just admit it. You're old. Lin Tian gritted his teeth. He really wanted to beat it. He took a deep breath and looked at the white-clothed girl who was curiously looking at him. He asked again. You are? The white-clothed girl looked at him. My name? You can say that. Lin Tian ondao. Sorry, because of some special reasons, I can't tell you this. However, I can tell you my other name. The girl's eyes were very beautiful. She blinked twice and giggled. I am the Divine King. Lin Tian. On the side, Wishing Crocodile also widened its eyes and couldn't help but open its mouth. They had heard of gods, but they were only legendary existences. However, this girl in front of them actually called herself the Divine King. It was like a person suddenly telling them that he had been raising a big carp in the sand for 10 years. Hello, Divine King, Lin Tian said. He looked at the girl and giggled. He then added, Divine King, goodbye. Saying this, he ignored this strange girl. He called Yitong and Wishing Crocodile, and walked towards the Dark Heart Sword sect. Ah! I really am the Divine King! The Divine King. The 5 Elements Crocodile was speechless. Little girl, there should be a limit to your boasting. You don't even have a trace of quintessential essence in your body, and you're still a Divine King. It had already scanned her with its divine sense. The girl was completely an ordinary person, but her temperament was a bit out of the ordinary. Perhaps she had seen other cultivators and read some notes about the cultivation world, so she knew about the legends of immortals and gods. Or perhaps this girl was a member of a cultivation family in this heaven realm and hadn't started cultivating yet. The girl curled her lips and didn't say anything. She quickened her pace and walked a few steps to Lin Tian's side, silently following him. Lin Tian stopped and frowned. What are you doing? Following you? the girl said. Following me? Why are you following me? Lin Tian's brows furrowed even deeper. Suddenly, a problem girl appeared. She didn't even have a bit of true essence in her body, yet she claimed that she was a divine king. Now, she even said that she wanted to follow him. This made him speechless. He simply didn't know this girl. The girl paused and thought for a moment. Then she said, "In any case, I just want to follow you." Lin Tian. He didn't say anything else. Divine light overflowed and wrapped around little Yitong. Immediately, he rose into the air and slowly left the ground. The girl reacted quickly and hugged his arm. "Take me flying too," she said. "What are you trying to do?" Lin Tian frowned again. "Follow you," the girl said firmly. Lin Tian took a deep breath. The golden divine light in his body surged and turned into a gentle force that shook the girl away. Then, he didn't stop. He wrapped little Yitong and quickly soared into the sky. Together with the wishing crocodile, he flew into the distance. The girl watched as Lin Tian flew into the sky. As she watched, she bit her lower lip and squatted down. Lin Tian was flying into the distance. He turned his head slightly and saw this scene. He also saw a wronged expression on the girl's face, as if she was a little girl who had been bullied. He frowned slightly and couldn't help but stop in his tracks. He felt as if he had done something wrong. After a pause, he turned around and descended from the sky, arriving in front of the girl. "Aren't you the divine king? You don't even know how to fly?" he said. His voice was calm, but there was a hint of ridicule in it. When the girl saw Lin Tian walking back, the trace of grievance on her face disappeared. She quickly stood up. "My power is temporarily sealed. I can't use it now." With that said, the girl took a few steps forward and hugged Lin Tian's arm tightly. It was as if she was afraid that Lin Tian would disappear if she let go. "I want to follow you. Take me flying too." Lin Tian was speechless. He felt a headache coming on when he heard the girl say things like, "My power is temporarily sealed," and, "I want to follow you, you have to fly with me," in a serious manner. What the hell was going on? "Master, just bring little big sister along. She doesn't look like a bad person," little Yitong said crisply at this time. Lin Tian glanced at little Yitong, then turned his head and looked at the wishing crocodile. "Why are you looking at your grandpa crocodile? Take me if you want." The wishing crocodile pursed his lips. Lin Tian frowned, looked at the girl again, and said, "I'm going to exterminate the sect. After this, if you follow me, you might be in danger." Although he didn't want the girl to follow him, what he said was the truth. Now, the great extinguishing god dynasty could send stronger assassins to assassinate him at any time. If she followed him, the girl might be in danger. "You're going to exterminate the sect." "I'm not afraid of danger," the girl said quickly. Her words were concise. Lin Tian was speechless. "I want to follow you." The girl hugged his arm tightly. She was very determined. "All right, kid. Just let her follow." The whooshing crocodile spoke again. "There are many demonic beasts in this place. If you really leave her here, she might be swallowed by the demonic beasts quickly. Not even her bones will be left." "Yes, yes." The girl nodded quickly. Lin Tian sighed and didn't say anything else. He simply stopped flying and walked towards the Dark Heart Swordsmanship sect. The whooshing crocodile flapped its 5-colored wings and followed. Little Yitong also trotted to follow. Hee. The girl was not stupid. Obviously, she knew that Lin Tian agreed to let her follow. She quickly ran up and followed behind Lin Tian. Lin Tian walked slowly and didn't say anything else. Just like that, a day passed in the blink of an eye. On this day, 3 people and 1 crocodile appeared outside a group of immortal mountains. Looking around, there were many majestic halls. "We're here. That's the Dark Heart Swordsmanship sect," the wishing crocodile said. Among the immortal mountains, the Dark Heart Swordsmanship sect was very grand. There were many halls, all of which were built with extraordinary stones. At the same time, there was a strong aura of time intertwined. It was obvious that it had been passed down for a long time. Lin Tianwei narrowed his eyes. With a slight movement of his mind, a black longbow appeared in his left hand. It was the deity slaying bow that he obtained from the black-robed man who tried to assassinate him in the Great Extinguishing Divine Dynasty. It was a top-level high-grade divine weapon. He took a step forward. Without any unnecessary movements, he held the bow in his left hand and pulled the string with his right. Suddenly, the golden divine power in his body surged. At the same time, the surrounding spiritual energy of heaven and earth also swept over. In the blink of an eye, the divine bow in his hand condensed into a golden arrow of divine light. A terrifying aura quickly intertwined. Good bow. The whooshing crocodile's eyes flashed with demonic light. He couldn't help but exclaim. Then, he glanced at Lin Tiandao. Kid, you want to give the Dark Heart Swordsmanship sect a gift? Of course. Lin Tiandao. He stared at the most magnificent divine pavilion in the Dark Heart Swordsmanship sect from afar. He could vaguely see the words Dark Heart Sword Pavilion on it. It was obvious that this was the symbolic divine pavilion of the Dark Heart Swordsmanship sect. He moved the arrow and aimed at the Dark Heart Sword Pavilion from afar. Then, he released the bowstring with his right hand. Whoosh! Suddenly, with a shocking sound, the golden arrow flew away like a real dragon. In the blink of an eye, it rushed into the Dark Heart Swordsmanship sect and directly hit the Dark Heart Sword Pavilion in the middle. This magnificent pavilion that had existed for God knows how many years exploded on the spot. It shattered into pieces, and debris flew everywhere. Smoke and dust billowed. In an instant, the entire Dark Heart Swordsmanship sect was alarmed. This is? The Dark Heart Sword Pavilion is destroyed? What happened? What happened? The expressions of the disciples of the Dark Heart Swordsmanship sect changed. They stared at the shattered Dark Heart Sword Pavilion in shock and anger. At the same time, the elders, the sect leader, the supreme elder, and the other big shots of the sect all rushed out. Who did this? The sect leader of the Dark Heart Swordsmanship sect roared, his voice shaking the sky. The Dark Heart Sword Pavilion was the symbolic ancient building of the Dark Heart Swordsmanship sect. It was very significant, but now it was destroyed just like that. How could he not be angry? Moreover, at this time, even the supreme elders of the sect who were at the enlightened level were angry. I did it! It was also at this time that a light voice rang out. Lin Tian brought little Yitong and the girl with him and flew over. They descended from the sky in the middle of the Dark Heart Swordsmanship sect. Suddenly, the expressions of everyone in the sect changed. It's that person! He came to our sect. What does he want to do? The disciples of the Dark Heart Swordsmanship sect trembled slightly. Even though this was the place where the Dark Heart Swordsmanship sect was established, their eyes were still filled with fear and dread when they saw Lin Tian. After all, Lin Tian had single-handedly destroyed the True Moon Immortal sect, which was more powerful than the Dark Heart Swordsmanship sect. How could they not be afraid of him? Most importantly, the Dark Heart Swordsmanship sect had chased after Lin Tian many times. At this time, Lin Tian, who had been chased by them many times, suddenly came here and directly stepped into their sect. How could this be a good thing? Chapter 976. Facing Lin Tian, everyone in the Dark Heart Swordsmanship sect felt fear in their hearts. Even the sect master and several supreme elders could not help but be moved. Their eyes were filled with fear. You! What do you want? One of the supreme elders of the Dark Heart Swordsmanship sect asked. Lin Tian stared at the person who spoke. You sent experts to kill me several times. You even joined forces with the other 7 sects to entrust the Great Extinguishing God Dynasty to kill me. What do you think I want? Hearing this, the sect master and several supreme elders' expressions changed. The sect master could not help but cry out. How did you know about this? As he spoke, he seemed to realize that he had misspoken. His expression instantly turned ugly. Great Extinguishing God Dynasty? What's that? A force? What does he mean by entrusted? This? I don't know. The ordinary disciples of the Dark Heart Swordsmanship sect were puzzled. Obviously, ordinary people did not know about the existence of the great extinguishing god dynasty. Lin Tian smiled coldly at this moment. He stared at the sect master and several supreme elders. At the same time, he spoke to the entire Dark Heart Swordsmanship sect. Other than the sect master and supreme elders, the rest of the people in the Dark Heart Swordsmanship sect can leave now. I won't kill you. After today, the Dark Heart Swordsmanship sect will cease to exist. His voice was not loud, but it instantly spread throughout the entire Dark Heart Swordsmanship sect, causing everyone to tremble. You want to destroy our sect? Many of the Dark Heart Swordsmanship sect disciples panicked. The supreme elders of the Dark Heart Swordsmanship sect were shocked and furious. You want to destroy our Dark Heart Swordsmanship sect? Otherwise? Do you think I'm here just to chat with you? Lin Tian's expression was calm. The several grand elders of the Dark Heart Sword sect clenched their fists, and their faces turned ashen. In fact, they could sense that Lin Tian's current cultivation was merely at the 9th heavenly layer of the Great Tao. If it was any other time, they would have slapped away Lin Tian's face. However, Lin Tian was too monstrous. With his cultivation in the 9th heavenly layer of the Great Tao, he was able to destroy the True Moon Immortal sect and kill a Wuzhen expert from their sect, the Coiling Dragon Holy Gate, and the rest of the 7 great sections. His battle strength could only be described as terrifying. Don't think that you can destroy our Dark Heart Sword sect just because you destroyed the True Moon Immortal sect. I have already secretly investigated. All the disciples and elders of the True Moon Immortal sect ran away from the sect out of fear. That was why you were able to destroy them. Don't think that my Dark Heart Sword sect is as cowardly as the True Moon Immortal sect. You are in our Dark Heart Sword sect. If we work together, we can exhaust him to death. The Dark Heart Sword sect master said coldly. Lin Tian tilted his head and appeared in front of the Dark Heart Sword sect master in a flash. The Dark Heart Sword sect master was shocked by Lin Tian's speed. Lin Tian raised his hand and slapped the Dark Heart Sword sect master to the ground. Then, he stepped on him. The sound of bones breaking resounded, and the Dark Heart Sword sect master let out a miserable scream. Sect master? The Dark Heart Sword sect's disciples trembled at the sight. The Dark Heart Sword sect still had 4 Wuzhen Realm Grand Elders, and they were furious. Junior. In their sect, a sect master being trampled on by someone else was an insult to the dignity of the entire Dark Heart Sword sect. Thus, even though they were a bit apprehensive of Lin Tian, they still stepped forward at this time, all of them displaying powerful divine abilities. Lin Tian raised his head and looked at them. With a buzzing sound, the reincarnation diagram rushed out from behind him and greeted them with a king's domain. Sizzling sounds rang out continuously. In the blink of an eye, the 4 Grand Elders' abilities were all crushed by the reincarnation diagram. Moreover, each of them was sent flying while coughing up blood. This scene shocked everyone in the Dark Heart Sword sect. Of the 4 Wuzhen Realm experts in their sect, the first Grand Elder was in the 2nd level of Wuzhen Realm. But now, these 4 experts' abilities were all shattered by Lin Tian in one blow, and all 4 Grand Elders were injured. The Dark Heart Sword sect's disciples were all stunned. They had heard that Lin Tian had single-handedly annihilated the True Moon Immortal cult. They had also heard that Lin Tian had killed a Wuzhen Realm expert from their sect, the Coiling Dragon Holy Gate, and the other 6 great sections. However, when they saw Lin Tian sending 4 Wuzhen Realm Grand Elders flying with a single strike, they couldn't help but shudder in fear. After all, hearing and seeing were 2 different feelings. That diagram. Someone stared at the reincarnation diagram above Lin Tian's head and couldn't help but tremble. It was as if he was facing a flawless heavenly treasure. The 4 Wuzhen Realm Elders of the Dark Heart Sword sect stabilized themselves in the distance. When they saw Lin Tian's diagram, they trembled and a huge pressure rose. Further away, the girl in white also looked at the reincarnation diagram above Lin Tian's head. Her beautiful eyes shone with a trace of reverence. Activate the sect's killing array. Activate the divine weapon. A Grand Elder of the Dark Heart Sword sect roared. The 4 Grand Elders raised their hands and began to form seals. Buzz. Above Lin Tian's head, the reincarnation diagram trembled. An array of divine light swept across like a ripple, sweeping towards the 4 Grand Elders. You bang! 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 In an instant, the 4 Grand Elders of the Dark Heart Sword sect were sent flying, and each of them coughed up blood. You guys are not enough. Lin Tian's voice was indifferent. As soon as he finished speaking, the clanging of swords rang out. Dense amounts of towering sword force rushed out from his body, enveloping the entire Dark Heart Sword sect in the blink of an eye. The terrifying towering sword force shattered the space around it. It was a shocking sight. This is? In an instant, the disciples of the Dark Heart Sword sect trembled again. At this moment, these people stared at the dense high heaven sword aura in the sky and felt the threat of death. It was as if the god of death had grabbed their throats. Everyone below the rank of Sect Master Tranquil Heart and Grand Elder, retreat within 10 breaths. Otherwise, kill. Lin Tian's voice was very calm. As soon as he finished speaking, the dense high heaven sword aura in the sky hummed in unison as if it was demonstrating its power. It instantly shattered the void. That scene was as if it was going to shatter everything in the world. In an instant, the fierce killing sword aura enveloped the entire Dark Heart Sword sect. The oppressive aura spread to every corner. The ordinary disciples of the Dark Heart Sword sect trembled. In the end, there were people like the True Moon Immortal sect who fled out of the Dark Heart Sword sect at an extremely fast speed. With the first, there would naturally be a second and a third. In the blink of an eye, the disciples of the Dark Heart Sword sect fled one after another. Even some of the great Dao Realm elders were no exception. These people had seen with their own eyes how Lin Tianyi had sent the 4 Grand Elders of their lineage flying. The 4 Grand Elders of their lineage could not even activate the sect guarding formation and could not even use their sect guarding divine weapon. This caused them to feel fear in their hearts. At this moment, Lin Tian had enveloped the entire Dark Heart Sword sect with boundless destructive sword aura, giving them a chance to leave. Why would ordinary people stay? After all, they only had one life. These people did not want to die and were afraid of death. Moreover, these people all had the same thought. Lin Tian, who had killed his way to the Dark Heart Sword sect, was too powerful. Even if they stayed to resist, it would be useless. They would only be crushed like ants. Since that was the case, why stay? Swoosh! 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 With the sound of the air being torn apart, the disciples of the Dark Heart Sword sect scrambled to escape. Such a scene caused the 4 enlightened realm Grand Elders of their lineage to become even more furious. One of them roared, "You dare to betray us like this? Stop and come back." With this voice, some of the disciples of the Dark Heart Sword sect who were fleeing trembled. They all stopped in their tracks. Clearly, they were very afraid of the Grand Elders of their lineage. Humph! Lin Tianling laughed. With a hum, the reincarnation diagram above his head trembled. Once again, a divine light rippled out, directly sending the Grand Elder of the Dark Heart Sword sect who had spoken flying. Bright red blood splattered across the sky. In the end, they don't have a sense of belonging to the sect. That's why they're leaving now. They're greedy for life and afraid of death. That's wrong, but as the leaders of the sect, you can't let the disciples have a sense of belonging to the sect. That's even more wrong, he said. You! The faces of the Grand Elders of the Dark Heart Sword sect turned ashen. For a moment, they couldn't find any words to refute. Lin Tianling snorted and swept his gaze across the ordinary disciples of the Dark Heart Sword sect. Why aren't you leaving? Since he started cultivating, he had killed many people. However, he wasn't a bloodthirsty person. When he came here, if these disciples of the Dark Heart Sword sect wanted to kill him, he would kill them directly. However, these people didn't. Therefore, he naturally wouldn't be ruthless to them. As for the Grand Elders of the Dark Heart Sword sect, they had sent experts to kill him. They had joined forces with the coiling dragon Holy Gate and the other 7 great sects to ask the all-extinguishing god dynasty to kill him. These people were obviously involved. He wouldn't show any mercy to them. The disciples of the Dark Heart Sword sect trembled. They looked at the several grand elders of the Dark Heart Sword sect fearfully. Then, they looked at the grand elders of the Dark Heart Sword sect who was under Lin Tianling's foot and couldn't struggle free. One by one, they turned around and rushed out. In less than 10 breaths, all the ordinary disciples and elders of the Dark Heart Sword sect had retreated. In the entire Dark Heart Sword sect, there were only 4 grand elders and the Dark Heart Sword sect's grand elder under Lin Tianling's foot. At this time, the 5 of them had ugly expressions on their faces. There was shock, anger, and fear. Lin Tianling lowered his head and looked at the Dark Heart Sword sect's grand elder under his foot. There was a hint of mockery in his voice as he said, "Your so-called cooperation of the entire Dark Heart Sword sect, does it exist?" The Dark Heart Sword sect's grand elder's face was ugly, and he was humiliated and unwilling to accept the result. "You Clang!" Chapter 977. Blood splattered on the ground, dyeing it red. It was a ghastly sight. For a moment, the 4 supreme elders of the Dark Heart Sword sect were all shocked. The sect master of the Dark Heart Sword sect was killed so easily. "You!" The 4 of them stared at Lin Tian with ugly expressions. Lin Tian raised his head and looked at the 4 of them. "It's your turn," he said. As his words fell, the dense killing swords in the sky trembled. The tips of the swords were sharp, emitting an ear-piercing sound. The 4 supreme elders of the Dark Heart Sword sect trembled again. They gathered together and quickly formed a seal, preparing to summon the sect guarding array. "Don't waste your energy. Your sect guarding array is already asleep." Lin Tian spoke at this time. He had been in the Dark Heart Sword sect for some time. With his strength as a rank 7 array manipulator and his mastery of the Heavenly One Soul technique, he had long made the sect guarding array of the Dark Heart Sword sect temporarily enter a dormant state. The 4 supreme elders of the Dark Heart Sword sect felt their hearts skip a beat. They all formed seals to sense and found that they really could not get in touch with the sect guarding array. "Damn it! Summon the divine weapon! This time, we must summon it!" one of them growled. As they formed seals, they stared at Lin Tian vigilantly to prevent being interrupted by Lin Tian like before. After 3 breaths, they finally summoned a black broadsword from the depths of the Dark Heart Sword sect. This was a low-grade divine weapon. The moment it appeared, it emitted an extremely strong sword aura, enveloping the space around it. "You want to destroy my Dark Heart Sword sect? It's not that easy!" The 4 of them stared at Lin Tian. The low-grade divine weapon was high in the sky. Under the combined power of the 4 enlightenment-level powerhouses, the sword aura was amazing, giving them some confidence at this moment. "You think too highly of yourself." Lin Tian's expression was indifferent. A stone sword rushed out of his body, and an even stronger sword aura immediately suppressed the sword aura of the black broadsword. "High-grade divine weapon?" The 4 supreme elders of the Dark Heart Sword sect were shocked again. Lin Tian's mind moved. The stone sword above his head aimed at the black broadsword and slashed straight down. In an instant, with a cracking sound, the black broadsword of the Dark Heart Sword sect shattered. All of a sudden, the 4 supreme elders trembled in fear. Their eyes were filled with fear. They had low-grade divine weapons, but who would have thought that Lin Tian actually had a high-grade divine weapon? With a single sword strike he had shattered their trump cards. At this moment, they finally understood why the True Moon Immortal sect was destroyed by Lin Tian. Lin Tian was not only strong, but also had a high-grade divine weapon. Clang! Lin Tian raised his hand, and the sound of a sword rang out. The towering heaven sword force in the sky vibrated. This sword aura was extremely terrifying, causing the 4 supreme elders to feel a chill run down their spines. You really want to destroy my Dark Heart Sword sect?" The 4 of them gritted their teeth. "You asked for it." Lin Tiantan said coldly. If someone gave him a drop of water, he would return the favor with an ocean. If someone stabbed him with a knife, he would stab them back twice. This was his principle. These people had sent experts to kill him several times, and even asked the great extinguishing godly dynasty to kill him. They had created such a troublesome enemy for him. So, how could he let them go? If he let them go, it would be cruel to himself. Repay kindness with kindness, and repay hatred with hatred. It was that simple. He raised his right hand and slowly pressed it down. Clang! In the sky, the densely packed towering heaven's sword intent descended like a rain of destructive swords. The 4 supreme elders of the Dark Heart Sword sect roared in anger, as they each used their powerful divine powers to resist the great Tao. However, the High Heaven Sword scripture was a supreme ancient technique of the Sword Exalt. How could the sword light that Lin Tian slashed out with such an ancient technique be so easy to block? The powerful abilities and laws of ways that the 4 great elders of the Dark Heart Sword sect cast out were shattered in the blink of an eye. Pft! 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 Blood splattered. In the face of the dense towering heaven's sword radiance, even though the 4 of them had powerful cultivations and were at the enlightenment realm, they were still in great trouble as their bodies were pierced through. Retreat! The first Supreme Elder gritted his teeth and roared. At this time, this person clearly saw how powerful Lin Tian was. He was too monstrous. With their strength, it was difficult to resist him. At this time, they wanted to escape. At the same time, the other 3 Supreme Elders also nodded. Their faces were pale as they fled into the distance. After all, where there was life, there was hope. However, just as they moved, the space trembled violently. You can't leave! Lin Tian's voice sounded. Above his head, the reincarnation diagram was drawn. The great Tao surged, and in the blink of an eye, it intertwined into the reincarnation diagram of the great Tao, directly suppressing the surroundings. With a thought, the reincarnation diagram pressed down on the 4 people like a boundless river of stars. The 4 supreme elders of the Dark Heart Swordsmanship sect trembled, and deep fear appeared in their eyes. At this moment, in the face of Lin Tian's reincarnation diagram of the great Tao, they suddenly felt as insignificant as dust and gravel. Fellow cultivator, please stop. Everything is negotiable. We can ask the great extinguishing god dynasty to stop the mission to assassinate you. The first supreme elder of this lineage trembled and said quickly. At the same time, the other 3 supreme elders also spoke and quickly said similar words to the first supreme elder. All of this was because the reincarnation diagram of the great Tao that Lin Tian summoned at this time was too powerful. It sealed off all directions, making them unable to escape. A real sense of death rose in their hearts. Stop the mission? In the distance, Wishing Crocodile sneered. Once the great extinguishing god dynasty accepts the mission, there is no such thing as stopping it. Even if the mission client requests to stop it, it will not work. Do you think Lord Crocodile doesn't know about this? Hearing this, the 4 supreme elders of the Dark Heart Swordsmanship sect trembled. You! They looked at Wishing Crocodile. Clearly, they did not expect that a great Tao realm crocodile demon would know so much about the great extinguishing god dynasty, an assassin organization. Enough. Disappear. An indifferent voice sounded. Lin Tian looked at the 4 of them. With a thought, the reincarnation diagram of the great Tao pressed down directly. Suddenly, the void collapsed inch by inch and shattered bit by bit. This was his most powerful technique, his most powerful divine art. At this moment, this technique enveloped the 4 of them, not giving them any chance to resist at all. Poof! 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 4 streaks of blood mist exploded. None of the 4 supreme elders blocked it. All of them were crushed, and their divine souls disappeared together with them. For a moment, the place fell silent. Take away their foundation and accumulation, Wishing Crocodile said. Lin Tian nodded. Of course. They entered the depths of this vein and handed over all the ancient scriptures, artifacts, Baodan, precious medicines, and Ling Jing of the Dark Heart Swordsmanship sect. Among them, there were many ancient scriptures and secret arts, more than 100 Dao weapons, and countless immortal artifacts. The Baodan was also quite a lot, which could be considered a small treasure of the sect. Only the amount of Lingjing surprised Lin Tian. It was only 700,000 kilograms. That's strange. The Dark Heart Swordsmanship sect is not weak. Why is there only 700,000 kilograms of Lingjing? He felt that it was a little strange. Wishing Crocodile thought for a moment and said, "It should be because they spent a lot of money entrusting the great extinguishing god dynasty to assassinate you." Hearing this, Lin Tian could not help but nod. That should be the case. He put away all the treasures of the Dark Heart Swordsmanship sect and then came to the center of the sect. Dragon marks spread out from the soles of his feet, shattering the layer of earth. Soon, a dense immortal aura intertwined. It was very dense. As far as the eye could see, one could vaguely see 32 spirit dragons entwined together under the collapsed soil. The scene was slightly magnificent. 32 immortal veins. Not bad. Wishing Crocodile said. Lin Tian moved. Even more dragon patterns interweaved, using powerful dragon techniques to compress the 32 immortal veins, turning them into 32-inch-long little dragons. Then, he sealed them with dragon patterns and stored them in his stone ring. Let's go. After doing all this, he said. He wrapped the white-clothed girl and little Yitong in divine light and soared into the sky of the Dark Heart Swordsmanship sect. Then dense sword lights flew out of his body again and fell like rain, completely destroying the place where the Dark Heart Swordsmanship sect was founded. After that, he really left. Soon, he was very far away from the place where the Dark Heart Swordsmanship sect was founded. Go to the Blood Rainbow Immortal sect. Wishing Crocodile chuckled. Lin Tian nodded calmly. Under Wishing Crocodile's guidance, it did not take long for them to arrive at the place where the Blood Rainbow Immortal sect was founded. Looking around, the Blood Rainbow Immortal sect and the Dark Heart Swordsmanship sect had the same aura. They were both located in a group of immortal mountains with hazy immortal veins. Lin Tian came here and did not hide anything. He directly soared into the sky and descended from the sky of the Blood Rainbow Immortal sect. This is? That person. Suddenly, the disciples and attendants of the Blood Rainbow Immortal sect were alarmed. At the same time, the sect master and supreme elder of the sect stepped out together. When they saw Lin Tian, their faces changed. Why are you here? The sect master's face changed. I allowed you to send experts to kill me. I allowed you to ask the great extinguishing god dynasty to assassinate me. Why can't I come here? Lin Tian's expression was indifferent. When these words came out, the sect master and supreme elders of the Blood Rainbow Immortal sect were shocked. How did you know? The sect master of this branch was shocked, and even the grand elders were moved. Lin Tian smiled and used the divining divine technique. Various divining divine elephants appeared and pressed down on the sect master and supreme elders of the sect. At the same time, he spread out his voice like he did in the Dark Heart Swordsmanship sect. Sect Master and Supreme Elders of the Blood Rainbow Immortal sect, retreat and leave the Blood Rainbow Immortal sect. Otherwise, kill. His voice was very calm. In the blink of an eye, it spread across the entire Blood Rainbow Immortal sect, causing the disciples of the Blood Rainbow Immortal sect to tremble. The sect master and supreme elders of the Blood Rainbow Immortal sect were shocked and angry. Facing Lin Tian's divining divine elephants, they did not hesitate and directly attacked. They opened the sect's protective array and took out their divine weapons. At the same time, they also used their own sect's various great techniques to cover Lin Tian. No one dared to underestimate Lin Tian. However, facing the current Lin Tian, their resistance and attacks were a little weak. It was not enough. Today, the Blood Rainbow Immortal sect will be removed from the sect. Lin Tian was very calm. As soon as he finished speaking, a sonorous sound rang out. The high-grade divine weapon level stone vein sword slashed out and directly destroyed the Blood Rainbow Immortal sect's protective array. After that, he took out the Great Tao Reincarnation Diagram. The intimidating divine diagram surged up and immediately enveloped the sect leader of the Blood Rainbow sect and the few grand elders of this lineage. Chapter 978. The Great Tao Reincarnation Diagram was Lin Tian's most powerful divine art, and its power was beyond doubt. The sect master and supreme elder of the Blood Rainbow Immortal sect were shrouded in it, and they had no ability to resist at all. In the blink of an eye, they were all crushed into blood mist. Without exception, their bodies and souls were destroyed. Sect master, supreme elders, this? How could this be? In the Blood Rainbow Immortal sect, the ordinary disciples were trembling in fear. Their sect leader, their supreme elder of the Wuzhen realm, were all killed in a single blow. For them, this was undoubtedly a nightmare. Lin Tian tilted his head and looked at the disciples of the Blood Rainbow Immortal sect. Suddenly, facing Lin Tian's gaze, the ordinary disciples and deacons of the Blood Rainbow Immortal sect trembled in fear. I'll go now. Someone shouted in fear and directly rushed out of the Blood Rainbow Immortal sect. Soon after, the other disciples, deacons and ordinary elders all started to move in a hurry. All of them had fearful expressions as they rushed out of the Blood Rainbow Immortal sect. At this moment, it was as if all of them wished that they could grow 2 more legs. Lin Tian looked at these people leaving and did not say anything. He walked towards the depths of the Blood Rainbow Immortal sect. Not long after, he collected the ancient scriptures, artifacts, Baoden, Lingjing, and other treasures of the Blood Rainbow Immortal sect. The Lingjing of the Blood Rainbow Immortal sect was almost the same as the Dark Heart Swordsmanship sect. There were only a few 100,000 genes left, which was less than the ant tribe in the 4th heaven. It seems like the Dark Heart Swordsmanship sect, Blood Rainbow Immortal sect, Ink Feather Origin Hall, and Coiling Dragon Holy Gate have all sent out a lot of Lingjing. At least a few million genes of Lingjing were sent to the Great Extinguishing God Dynasty to kill you, Wishing Crocodile said. Lin Tian was slightly surprised when he heard this. The reward for the Great Extinguishing God Dynasty is so high? A few million kilograms of Lingjing was nothing to the current him because he cultivated the Dragon Burial Scripture and reached the 9 heavens of the Great Tao. With his cultivation level and the Dragon Burial Scripture, it was not difficult to find a few million kilograms of Lingjing. However, for ordinary inheritances and cultivators, this was a bit shocking. It could definitely be considered a super immortal treasury. Of course. I told you before that the price of hiring the all-extinguishing God Dynasty to kill someone is very high. Ordinary people and ordinary forces definitely can't afford it, Wishing Crocodile said. However, the reason why the price to assassinate you is several million Lingjing is related to your own strength. It's obvious that the all-extinguishing God Dynasty has gathered a lot of information about you through the 8 great sections. To be honest, the assassins sent by this branch to assassinate you are definitely elites. If it weren't for the sudden change in your cultivation of the Delusion Breaker Divine Eye after accepting the mission, their assassination would have been very successful. Lin Tian nodded because that was the truth. He came to the center of the Blood Rainbow Immortal sect and used the dragon patterns to break open the ground. He took out all the immortal veins under the Blood Rainbow Immortal sect. There were a total of 32 immortal veins. He compressed them into 32 small dragons with the Dragon Burial Scripture and put them away. The girl in white stood at the side and stared at Lin Tian from beginning to end. Her eyes were filled with a strange light. Lin Tian could naturally feel it. He tilted his head and looked at her. Why are you staring at me? Is there a flower on my face? The girl shook her head and said with a smile, You're prettier than a flower. Lin Tian. He felt as if someone had punched his chest when he heard the girl say, Prettier than a flower. He was very speechless. He didn't say anything else. The golden divine light spread out and enveloped the girl and little Yitong. They soared into the sky and destroyed the Blood Rainbow Immortal sect's place of establishment with the densely packed soaring heaven sword aura. Then, they left and traveled far away in the blink of an eye. After that, he didn't stay any longer. Under the guidance of Wishing Crocodile, he soon arrived at the Mo Yuan Palace. This chapter is not finished, please turn the page, directly stepped into it. Then, not long after, the ear-piercing sound of the sword reverberated. The disciples and deacons of the Mo Yuan Palace rushed out one after another and fled in fear. Damn it! A furious roar sounded in the Mo Yuan Palace. About 4 hours later, Lin Tian killed the current master of the Mo Yuan Palace and a few supreme elders of this branch. He kept all the foundation of the Mo Yuan Palace and took out all the 32 immortal veins. Then, he used the densely packed soaring heaven sword aura to destroy the place of establishment of the Mo Yuan Palace, turning it into ruins. Then, he walked away. Soon, they were extremely far away from the Mo Yuan Palace. Kid Lin, the Coiling Dragon Holy Sect and the other 4 immortal sects won't be easy to deal with. Don't go there for the time being. Wishing Crocodile said. The Coiling Dragon Holy Sect and the other 4 immortal sects had a longer history than the Dark Heart Sword Sect and the other 3 great sections. There were many experts in the sect and they had many tricks up their sleeves. Even if Lin Tian had cultivated the divine eyes of Delusion Breaker, it would be difficult to break through and escape. You said this before? Of course, I remember. Lin Tian said. I also said that after destroying the Dark Heart Sword Sect, Blood Rainbow Immortal Sect and the Mo Yuan Palace, I will immediately go into seclusion to comprehend the Eternal Killing Formation. He snorted coldly. Wait until I master the Eternal Killing Formation and carve 50 Eternal Killing Formation platforms. I don't believe that I can't destroy them. The Coiling Dragon Holy Sect, the other 4 immortal sects, and the Dark Heart Sword Sect had jointly entrusted the all-extinguishing God Dynasty to assassinate him. If he hadn't cultivated the divine eyes of Delusion Breaker during that period of time, he would have really died. Even Wishing Crocodile and Little Yitong would have been killed along with him. Moreover, even if he had successfully avoided the all-extinguishing God Dynasty's first assassination attempt, he would have to face even more powerful assassins sent by the all-extinguishing God Dynasty. It could be said that he was in danger of being assassinated at any time. These immortal sects had brought him so much trouble and created such a huge enemy for him. How could he tolerate it? Wishing Crocodile chuckled. That's how it should be. They walked in a direction. After a few hours, they found an extremely remote mountain that was uninhabited. I'll start comprehending the formation. It will take about 10 days. During this process, don't get too close to me, Lin Tian said as he walked to a large rock in the mountain. During the process of comprehending the Eternal Killing Formation, terrifying killing intent would spread out. If the group stayed too close to him, they could be injured by this killing intent. Don't worry. Wishing Crocodile clearly understood. Lin Tian nodded. After taking a deep breath, he closed his eyes and began to comprehend the Eternal Killing Formation in his sea of consciousness. This killing formation was created by the Formation Emperor Heavenly Sovereign, and it was the culmination of his life's achievements in Array Dao. Its divine might was boundless. Previously, he had only controlled a corner of it, but it had helped him kill many experts who were far stronger than him. It was one of his strongest trump cards. At this time, if he wanted to destroy the Coiling Dragon Holy Sect and the other 4 immortal sects, it wouldn't be as easy as destroying the Dark Heart Sword Sect and the other 3 immortal sections. He would have to rely on this Eternal Killing Formation. Moreover, the more he could control this Eternal Killing Formation, the more he would be able to travel the world in the future. It could be said that this was killing 2 birds with 1 stone. 1. As he comprehended the Eternal Killing Formation, the one heavenly soul incantation automatically circulated. Faint soul light seeped out of his body, crystal clear and pure. Wishing Crocodile, Little Yitong, and the white-robed girl all distanced themselves from Lin Tian, standing dozens of feet away. The young girl stared at Lin Tian, her beautiful eyes unblinking. She looked very serious. Little girl, why do you keep staring at Brat Lin? Wishing Crocodile asked. Since the white-robed girl appeared, her gaze had been fixed on Lin Tian, and she didn't look away. That's right, little sister. Why do you keep staring at Master? Little Yitong also spoke. The young girl retracted her gaze from Lin Tian, and her beautiful big eyes looked at Wishing Crocodile and little Yutong. She didn't feel embarrassed at all, and she didn't say anything. A playful smile hung on her fairy-like face. Wishing Crocodile. Who the hell are you? Why did you suddenly jump out? Why do you have to follow Brat Lin? It spoke again, frowning as it asked. From the moment it saw the young girl until now, Lin Tian had destroyed the Dark Heart Sword sect, the Bloody Rainbow Immortal sect, and the Ink Feather Origin Hall, killed dozens of Wuzhen experts, and seized dozens of immortal veins from the three big sections. Even an ordinary Wuzhen expert would be shocked, but this young girl seemed very calm throughout the process, and she didn't look surprised at all. This made it, an old monster that didn't like to think, feel more and more strange. It felt that this young girl was a bit abnormal. The young girl tilted her head, looked at Wishing Crocodile, paused, and said, I must follow him. Wishing Crocodile. Hearing the young girl's words, it was speechless. In the end, it was too lazy to care. It looked at Lin Tian, who was comprehending the eternal killing formation. Over there, Lin Tian was sitting cross-legged on the stone platform with his eyes slightly closed. The soul light outside his body was becoming more and more intense. At the same time, an astonishing murderous aura gradually spread out. In an instant, the nearby space collapsed and split open, and the nearby grass and plants were also shaken into pieces. Moreover, with the passage of time, this killing intent became more and more intense, quickly spreading to the surroundings. In this way, 3 days passed in the blink of an eye. On this day, the killing intent outside Lin Tian's body became even stronger, as if he had turned into a source of death. Even the old monsters like Wishing Crocodile were shocked. They asked Yutong and the young girl to stay further away from Lin Tian, and at the same time, they also retreated far away. It was also on this day that the sixth heaven was in an uproar. The news of the collapse of the three great sects, the Dark Heart Sword sect, the Blood Rainbow Immortal sect, and the Ink Feather Origin Hall, was accidentally discovered by some cultivators. In the blink of an eye, the news spread throughout the sixth heaven, making all the cultivators in this heaven know about it. Moreover, after that, based on the descriptions of the disciples that escaped from these three sects, all of them found out that it was Lin Tian who destroyed these three sects, and all of them were horrified once more. It's that ruthless person again. After the True Moon Immortal sect, he also destroyed the Dark Heart Sword sect, the Blood Rainbow Immortal sect, and the Ink Feather Origin Hall. These three great sects have chased him several times. It's reasonable that they were destroyed by him, but his strength is simply. Many cultivators were shocked. Not long after the True Moon Immortal sect was destroyed, the Dark Heart Sword sect, the Blood Rainbow Immortal sect, and the Ink Feather Origin Hall were destroyed by the same person. This was too shocking. One has to know that these great sects have been passed down for a long time. Speaking of which, the Coiling Dragon Holy Gate and the other 4 great immortal sects have chased that person several times. Will they be destroyed too? Not to that extent. The 5 great immortal sects, including the Coiling Dragon Holy sect, are much stronger than the Dark Heart Sword sect, Crimson Rainbow Immortal sect and Ink Feather Yuan Hall. There are experts of the 4th sky of Wuzhen in charge. It's not easy to destroy these 5 immortal sects. Although that person is terrifying, it's impossible for him to do such a thing. That's not necessarily the case. God knows if that ruthless person has some extremely terrifying special means. After all, it's very unusual for him to be able to kill a second-layer Enlightenment Realm expert at the 9th heavenly layer of the Great Tao. Maybe he really has a trump card that can make the 5 great immortal sects helpless. It's indeed possible, and if that's the case, if he really destroyed the Coiling Dragon Holy Gate and the other 4 great immortal sects, it's really overturning the heavens. In this heaven, many cultivators couldn't help but feel a chill down their spines. P.S. Today's update. This chapter ends. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.